Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
There's Jacoby Walter on the feed from Ray J. Dennis. Hits another three-pointer. Jacoby Walter, 24 on the night, and the Bears are back within one at 48-47. Here's the steal on the inbounds. And, oh my gosh! A dunk at the other end by Eve Missy. He stole the ball, and he jammed it at the other end.
Alexander sets the screen. Now Ashworth will reset the offense. Here's Shireman. Got a glimpse. That one a little strong, and there's Trout for the offensive board. 9th offensive rebound for the Jays. And Shireman baseline scoop for 2. Arabello, rotation around the Dotzler. Inside, count the bucket. And the foul. I got it. I heard it. I liked it. Time to shoot. Dotzler for 3. He hits. But another three-point shooter.
Good morning and welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well.
What's up?
We are coming to you live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and we are here on a Wednesday. Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday?
It is Wednesday.
Okay. I get a little confused sometimes.
Well, you know what?
Days of the week
now that I
blending together.
Now that I think about that.
I
just double checked the retweet that I made, and it was going up on a Tuesday. So
that was yesterday.
Let's take this down and repost.
I'm glad it's not just me trying to figure out the days of the week here, but we are here with you on a Wednesday on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. You can find us live on YouTube and Twitter as we stream the show there as well. And we are. I mean, listen, I know I'm a little tired. I'm a little bit.
Great to see
sleepy. A little bit. You know, those 8 o'clock tip-offs are not my favorite in the world.
Yeah, I still go to bed about that time though, like 10:30.
Yeah. So I went down to the game. So when you're down, I didn't get back until 11, and then so it was probably 11:30 by the time I went to bed, which is. It's only like an hour and a half different than normal, but
it feels that way though.
At my age, you start feeling it, It's
at your age.
Yeah, you got to watch out, man. It's coming for you. Those 2-day
early 30s.
Yeah, mid 30s. Those 2-day hangovers and that hour of sleep it's coming for you,
Roddy.
Man.
You don't have kids, man.
I know, but my dogs are so needy.
Are they?
Oh, dude. Doug literally wakes up at the same time every morning. Is like, all right, it's time to go outside. We are going, regardless of Saturday, Sunday, weekend, whatever. And it's usually about 6 a.m. So I'm up usually already, right? But on the weekends, it's like, hey, bud, why don't we sleep in just a little bit here? Nope, he doesn't know what a weekend is. He's ready to go all the time.
Well, you know what? He's on his same sleep schedule, his sleep pattern, and he doesn't want to change. I mean, just like people don't want to change their routine.
It's true.
A dog doesn't want to change his or her routine either.
I'm trying to just explain to him, like, buddy, it's a weekend.
It's okay, man.
We don't have to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I
and he's not feeling it. As I was coming in today, I was behind. It was a very kind of eerie scene because a lot of times when we come into the studio here, there's not a ton of people on the road yet because we come in here at a reasonably early hour. And I was following this like caravan of cars into our parking lot.
That park over by the Alamo?
Yeah, and it was super unusual. And I've never been part of the caravan before. And so you always see cars over there, but it kind of felt like one of those disaster movies where the government calls in all of its specialists. And so there's just like line of like 30 cars that are driving to the facility to like examine the alien or whatever. And, there was like 10 cars, it was weird because there's usually not that many. But then I realized it was like an HVAC company. So I don't know what the movie theater's got going on. If it's, they're dealing with, they're probably switching like their heat on and stuff this time of year and getting everything.
Yeah, they're just turning on the units.
Man, when did you buy your house? A couple years ago?
No, January.
Oh, so like not even a year ago. Okay. So have you experience. Maybe I'm just a weirdo, paranoid, anxious person, which
Hit me
is
with it.
entirely possible.
Because I know I am too.
Every time I wake up and my house is an uncomfortable temperature, either like a little too cold or a little too warm, I have this like, is this the day? Is this the day the HVAC went out? Is this?
I don't have that feeling.
Every
ever.
single time. If I wake up cold in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh God, did it happen? Because it actually did happen to me like 2 years ago. I had to replace my HVAC.
Okay, so a little PTSD there.
Yeah, it is.
But
and I'm like, no, not again.
Right.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, if it happened to me like that, I probably would get a little paranoid. So, for example, I set a couple of alarms. I know I should probably get up on the first alarm, but I don't know one person.
I set like 12.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know one person that like actually rolls out of bed on their first alarm. And I'm sure you're out there, but just personally, I don't know anybody that does that. And so I've had instances though where I've overslept.
Mm-hmm.
So I set a lot of alarms because of that reason. Well, there are times where I wake up in a panic because I think I overslept again, even though I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
One of those days was today.
Oh no.
So I hit the snooze button. It was 5 when I hit it, and I bounce out of bed thinking that it's 6:30 and I'm going to be late, and it's 5:05. But you bounce out because you tricked your mind to think, you're late, and you're going to make Ravi do the show alone today.
I think I told you about this, but I've had that on multiple occasions on like a Saturday or a Sunday. I'll wake up and it's like 7:30 and I am just in a dead panic. And I like look at my phone. I'm like, oh, freaking out. And then I'm like, wait, is it the weekend? And then I wake my wife up. I'm like, babe, what day is it?
On your phone, it's crazy. When you look at your home screen, it shows the time and the date.
I know, but I don't believe it. Like I end up in this like panic. I'm like, is that right? So that's why I like wake up my wife. I'm like, what day is it?
Yeah.
She's like, it's Sunday. Leave me alone.
And then you take an elbow to the jaw
Yes,
as she rolls over to the other side.
Yeah, and I was like, don't worry, I'll take Doug out. It's fine.
You just sleep. You want breakfast too?
Let's go get some breakfast because I don't cook. We've got a good show for you here today. We've got Kendeigh Maloney joining us from the Omaha Supernovas.
That's indeed correct.
They start their season off here pretty soon, so she will join us to talk about the professional volleyball team here in Omaha, Nebraska. Joining us at 8 a.m., we will be joined by Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7, our regular Wednesday guest. 8:30, we've got our guy Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Probably talk a little high school football with him this week.
Yeah, let's get after it.
It's getting pretty serious there.
Maybe touch on some follow-up thoughts that we don't get to with BC on Nebraska football as well.
I bet Andy, I didn't see him, but I bet Andy was or somebody from KETV, I bet was at the Creighton game last night as well. And then at 9 o'clock, we'll wrap up the show with our friend and colleague, Avarie Howard. She'll be joining us for that full last hour, as she has been on most Wednesdays. And we'll play a little Guess Who. See if she can see if
Guess Who round 3.
I think I won the title last time, so we'll see how she does here.
So you've won back-to-back weeks?
I have, yeah. I mean,
you're a 2-time champ.
No big deal here, but you had a great
go back through the notes.
You had a great idea next week for Avarie, though.
Yeah, we're not going to tell her.
We're not going to tell her. Do you think she's listening?
Sometimes I don't know when our people are listening, so
she listens. I want to hide. A lot.
Yeah, I want to hide that thought because we'll know when. We'll get a buzz on our phone. Like, what are you guys about to do?
Yeah,
what bomb are you about to drop next week?
We've got a little surprise for Avarie next week.
I think she's going to enjoy it.
I don't, but I still think it's a good idea. That is the lineup for you here today. I did want to start with Creighton. They kicked their season off last night.
I thought you were about to say they kicked the living stew out of their opponent last night.
They did. I don't know many people that have stew inside of them, but if there was any inside the Rattlers, it would be out. The Jays won 105-54.
Is that a big gap?
That's a big number. And it was, obviously it could have been worse because I don't think a starter played after the 12-minute mark in the second half, somewhere around there. And so I looked at the I looked at Jacob and Anna and Mike Sauter. We're all sitting up there together with a bunch of other media members, and I go, hey, I think it was at the under 12 timeout. There was about like 11:50 left in the game. I go, hey, we're not going to see like the real rotation for the rest of the game. I think they were at
like 75 points.
Yeah, I think they were higher. No, because they hit 75 at the 14-minute mark because we all laughed about it. Because they do the Pizza Hut thing or the Godfather's thing.
Uh-huh.
They're like, hey, free pizza. And we looked up because it felt so early in the second half.
It was really early.
So but
we forget that the halftime score was what, like 51-20?
I think they were pushing 60 at halftime. I don't remember. But
if it would have been a
56,
year, if it would have been a year ago, what would the score have been at the end of the game? Yeah, compared last year's team to this year, would have been like
in an exhibition.
Yeah, would have been like 80-53 or 80.
This was a real game, not an exhibition.
Would have been like 80.
Yeah,
I know.
It felt like an exhibition.
I think it would have been pretty close, Shane.
Pretty close, about the same.
I think you would see last year's team in the 90s. Maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, like
maybe at lowest high 80s.
Like North Dakota last year was 96-61. Holy Cross was 94-65. They had a couple games like Riverside. I think they only scored 80. But I mean, you're probably talking high 80s, low 90s still. Like it's not a ton different in terms of the final score. What was a ton different was the way it looked and felt.
Mm-hmm.
The ball movement. And you were texting me during the game. The ball movement from this team.
It's just insane.
It's the thing that, like, growing up watching Creighton and some of the teams that I've liked the most from Creighton, it is the thing that they do the best when they are the most fun and watchable for me, whether it was a few years ago in the COVID shortened season or you want to go back to like some of the Doug McDermott teams had really high level passing. But the difference between some of the other really high quality passing teams from Creighton and what we have now is previous Creighton teams, the ability was lower. Like the overall, whether it's athletic ability, just overall ability was a little bit lower. Not so much on that 1920 team because that was an elite team. But even that team, you're running out a 6'7" guy at center, in Christian Bishop. You're running out Denzel Mahoney as a small ball 5 at 6'5". And those lineups were incredible. That small ball lineup is still one of my favorite lineups Creighton's ever trotted out there. But this is a different team in the sense that, you've got 6'11", you've got 7'1" Ryan Kalkbrenner. You've got like 6'10", 6'11" Frederick King. And if you want to go a small ball lineup, you throw out 6'10" Isaac Trout as your center, which is just it's a totally different ballgame.
Who looked impressive from not only his work on the inside, but on the outside. It seemed like he didn't get turned off by the fact that he missed his first shot. Sometimes like it's your first game and you're like, I really need that first one to fall to really get that confidence boost going. And he didn't seem fazed by a miss. Ashworth, I can already tell, is going to be one of my favorite players on this team. Just the way that he moves on the court. And all offseason, I was saying this, right? All offseason, I was like, what really impresses me about him is he's not afraid to make the extra pass. He's just not. And there was a moment,
and he does it quickly
in the first half.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was halfway through the first. I can't totally remember, but he gets the ball. Shot clock's winding down. There's like 2 or 3 seconds on the shot clock. And instead of forcing up a runner from the baseline, he kicks it out to Trey Alexander for a longer 3, and Alexander cashes it, who is, Trey Alexander is set for a breakout year.
He looks incredible.
An NBA breakout year, not just a breakout year, an NBA breakout year. Not only can Trey Alexander fire away, not only can Stephen Ashworth both shoot the 3, which we knew based off his stats at Utah State last year, and facilitate. Not only can Baylor Shireman get hot and stay hot and make the crazy shot. Not only can Isaac Trout, play that outside spot, which I think he played a little bit better than Mason Miller.
I don't know. It's tough to say. He's was more aggressive offensively than Mason Miller for sure. I thought that Mason's really good on that starting group because he doesn't need the ball yet in terms of his development. You've got three guys in Ashworth, Alexander, and Shireman that are going to get the ball a ton. Kalkbrenner's obviously going to get the ball a ton as well, although not.
Who probably needs it more.
Yes, yeah, but I also think they're kind of like saving him a little bit.
But I also thought Florida A&M did a nice job on not allowing him to roll off that screen to the basket, but it allowed for Alexander and Ashworth to get to the rack.
That's going to be the Russian roulette you play with this team all year, right? You're either going to take everything away from Ryan Kalkbrenner or you're going to try and get out to shooters. You're not going to be able to do both effectively at the same time because Kalkbrenner puts too much pressure on the rim and he's too good, and the floor is too well spread out now. That's the biggest difference between this year and last year. I will say it's that and Ashworth they're not being really a ball dominant guard on this team. Ashworth is going to handle the ball. Alexander is going to handle the ball. Shireman is going to handle the ball. It's not going to be one guy all the time handling the ball. And so you're going to have a much more diverse attack in terms of how the offense looks. But I think the early scouting report on Creighton is going to be to take away Kalkbrenner as teams realize what type of shooting this team is as opposed to last year. I think Kalkbrenner might eat a lot because teams are not going to want to continue to give up. I mean, if Ashworth continues to get the looks he's getting, he's going to shoot 50% from three this year. Like I don't even think I'm exaggerating. Like I think that number's on the table.
Yeah, the looks were wide open. When they play tougher competition and conference competition, that'll be different.
It is, but I mean, I'm even knocking him down because he was 5 for 7 last night. So I'm knocking him down a few percentage points. My point is though, with Ashworth and really any of these guys is Ashworth doesn't really seem to take the heat checks that Baylor Shireman does, which brings Shireman's percentage down a little bit. I love the heat checks. Don't get me wrong. And I think they actually do offer something for Creighton because they put pressure on the defense in a different way. But Ashworth doesn't really take those, so they're not going to bring his percentage down. And I really think teams are going to be so focused on Trey Alexander. They're going to be so focused on Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think Ashworth is going to end up with maybe not as open as he was last night, but he's going to end up with wide open looks all year because you have to pick who you're going to let beat you, quote unquote. And I think if you're looking at Kalkbrenner, Alexander, Ashworth, Shireman, it's
a scary group.
Yeah, you're probably, Ashworth is 4th on that list at best. And so him and Mason Miller are going to end up with wide open looks, and Trout, when he's in there, are going to end up with wide open looks all year. Those guys are going to have every opportunity to just shoot the lights out of the ball.
Now, what makes this team really scary, and there's a couple of things. We alluded to it first, the selflessness of this team. That is number one on my list on why this Creighton team will be scarier than they were last year. Point 2, and you pointed this out, but I'm going to still stick on the lower end. They can show 2 lineups in a game. You technically added 3 because Shireman could play the point if you needed him to.
I mostly meant not 3 full lineups, but 3 different primary ball games.
Yeah, 3 different looks. Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean by lineups, right? When I say the first lineup, Ashworth is your 1. Alexander's your 2. It's Shireman, it's Miller, it's Kalkbrenner, or insert Trout at the 4 if you'd rather have that. And then in your second lineup, it's Trey, and then you mix in some of the other guys on the bench.
Farabello,
right?
Lawson, Doetzler.
And Doetzler played really well. I was impressed with him in his first game of the year with Creighton. Just the way that it doesn't look like it took him very long to translate high school to college.
It was weird because
to transition, rather.
It in the exhibition against Wayne State, when he got out there, his first couple possessions, he looked really sped up. And then after that, he really seemed to feel like he got the pace of the game better. And as soon as he got in against Florida A&M, he seemed ready to go. And he was pacing himself.
Well, and really sometimes as a freshman, you worry about, should I be attacking? Should I be getting the ball to somebody else that has done it before me or has been here longer than me? You kind of have that. As a young player on this team, I got to make sure that my experienced guys get their looks, get their touches. But that's not how Doetzler plays. No, Doetzler plays like a junior.
He did not seem concerned about not being
about anybody.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just the way that he came off of screens, the way he was moving without the basketball, because I paid close attention to him because I wanted to see, like, okay, like, are you just standing around? Like, are you waiting for your look? No, like, he was constantly
He seems pretty
moving
comfortable
on the floor, and it won't be the only time. Well, a couple of years ago won't be the only time that you see Dotzler's name in the stat book, because Josiah is set to really be a huge part of this team in the future.
It's kind of incredible, because I think a couple things. When he got recruited, like when he got offered by Creighton and committed, a lot of people were just like, well, did he just get the offer because of his brother? Like, he was good in high school, and especially when the offer came.
He was really good in high school.
I know, but especially when the offer came, which was before his senior year, if I'm remembering correctly. People are like, he's been pretty good, but like, they were kind of concerned about like overall size and, what is he really that level, especially the way Creighton has kind of upgraded their recruiting. You look at their recruiting classes over the last handful of years, and people were kind of like, is that kind of just like a legacy offer? What's going on here? Because then it was kind of a weird class, because it was going to be a small class anyway, based on the way the past classes had worked out. And so there was a lot of people that weren't really sure about him, especially people that hadn't seen him a ton in high school. And then when he came in to camp to be enrolled and be in fall camp, there was a lot of people that was like, well, he's going to redshirt, but you just kept hearing from the coaching staff. They're like, man, he looks pretty good. We like these things. He brings some stuff to the table. We think he can help us win. And then you kind of are like, okay, how much of that's coach talk? How much of that is real? And then you see in the exhibition, and then last night, you go, I think that, he was the first or second guard off the bench. Farabello came off the bench first, and then it was Dotzler. He was ahead of Jonathan Lawson, who was a pretty highly touted recruit when he went to Memphis. Obviously, he's got the experience at Memphis, although he didn't play a ton there. And Lawson looks the part a lot more than Dotzler does, right? He's 6'7". He's built like a 21, 22-year-old. He's got kind of the physique that you'd be like, okay, that guy can play Big East basketball. And Dotzler's, I think, bigger than people give him credit for, but I think people are really surprised, not only that he played as well as he did last night, but that he's not redshirting, and that he legitimately, I think, is going to be an important part of this team this year.
I'd be curious what the people think. 888-638-4876. What you thought of Creighton's opening performance. Give us a call on the Warhorse Casino phone line. But you're absolutely right. There's so many pieces to this team, so many impressive pieces. As I was watching last night, I'm like, who's the odd man out? And I don't know if there is an odd man out on this Creighton team. Like, yes, there's going to be guys that get majority of the minutes because they are the guy on this team. But coming off the bench, that's kind of like who I am like paying close attention to. And I'm like, man, I think Farabello is somebody that like may lose minutes because of how well some of these young guys are playing and throughout the season. If Farabello isn't making shots like they brought him in to do, you may see the addition of Dotzler more, or let's just say Miller's the slot in 4, like he's starting. You may see more of a Trout look and go for bigger than for smaller with Farabello out there. And that's not a knock on Francisco Farabello. Like, he's a great player. I think he moves the ball really well, and defensively he's really strong too. And so but the point is, it's hard for me to even like point out somebody that may get left out, because it seems like everybody does their job in such a unique way that Coach McDermott can just throw anybody out there and be like, yeah, we'll find success in this regard or that regard.
Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You know, again, it comes back to this, what we talked about before, what Coach Rule always talks about is the standard of play, right? The standard of play has to be correct in order to give yourself a chance to win the game. And you look back at the game, and the first half, it wasn't to the standard. And then the good thing about the guys and the sideline and everything about an atmosphere like that was when we needed to the most, you saw the guys come out. I thought that's when they were the most alive and they were back to normal and playing to the standard. Those last 3, 4, 5 series-ish right in there about where it was like, hey, we have to stop and we cannot give up points like that. And they went out there and played some ball, and you saw some guys actually running through guys and throwing guys down and fighting off the blocks better. So, you know, this week we gotta make sure we know what to do so we feel comfortable and get them to that mindset to where they can just go attack.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla with Andrew Rogers. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, live on Twitter and YouTube as well. And we are brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center with 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been voted best of Omaha, first place 18 years in a row. Family owned and operated in Omaha for over 25 years. They've got all the latest technologies to work on the whatever make and model that you've got to bring them over there. And They invest in the community as well with their Give Back program, giving back to the community with every car repaired. Go check them out at dingmans.com. Andrew, I wanted to get to some of the comments that the Nebraska coaches have made over the last few days. There's been a lot. You heard Tony White there as we were coming back. There's been a lot that the coordinator said yesterday, that Coach Rule said as well in his, increasingly lengthy press conferences, which I kind of enjoy, because he actually says something. I've got this weird. I know I'm unlike most media members in the sense that I, for the most part, really don't care about press conferences because largely I don't think you get a lot out of them.
Mm-hmm.
This coaching staff, I think you actually do, especially from Rule. You get pretty good stuff. And a lot of it's him talking to his team, and a lot of it's him talking to, people other than the media. And he kind of just uses it as his pulpit a little bit to take whatever question you have and form it to whatever he wants to talk about. But I do think you actually get decent information out of it.
For both wins and losses.
Yeah.
Because normally you listen to a press conference after what? After a loss.
Yeah.
Because you want to hear what the coaching staff had to say. You want to hear how the players respond, things like that. You get more out of a losing press conference than you do a winning one. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I look forward on Mondays to hearing 35 minutes of what Coach Rule has to say, because he always surprises me. Now, will that be the case, next year, a year from
2,
now,
3, 4,
right?
Who knows?
Who knows? But I think I'll still find myself listening, just because I always feel like I get something out of it.
For sure. And that's pretty uncommon in this industry with press conferences. You usually
100%. You also get coaches too that don't even want to speak that long.
Yes.
It's a challenge.
How many coaches do you know that speak for 35 minutes every week?
Yeah,
there are coaches out there that are like, I'm not standing up here for more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes max. Coach Rule's giving you double time.
Yeah, I mean, there's some coaches you could go an entire month of these Monday pressers and barely get to 35 minutes, because what's that, like 8, 9 minutes a pop? That's about what a lot of these guys give you. I appreciate the amount of time he's willing to give the media, because it's not just giving time to people in our industry. It's also, I think he views it, and I view it this way, he's giving time to the fans. He's giving time to the people of the state that invest in his program.
It's also easier to talk to somebody, like ask a question to somebody that's willing to give an answer no matter what.
Yeah.
And will be like,
and you get better questions because of it.
You'll be a person about it, and instead of being like a Bill Belichick or possibly a Jim Harbaugh who can get a little like snarky, or
even like
make you
Saban
feel,
gets really snarky.
Yeah. Like some of the old Dabo Sweeney gets snarky. Like you have guys that,
we know Dabo can snarky.
You have guys that, are harder to ask questions to, which is why those press conferences don't last as long. But because you get somebody so transparent in Coach Rule, and somebody that at least treats you well, no matter if the question is dumb or not. Because there are dumb questions out there.
I mean, listen,
I've asked a dumb question before.
There was a question at media days this year, I think from a Michigan State reporter, that was totally bizarre and off the wall and had nothing.
He still answered.
And not only did he answer it, he answered it great. I think it was about, or no, it was a Wisconsin person, because there was a shooting in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And last year,
correct.
And Nebraska prayed on the field afterward. And he obviously had nothing to do with that, because he was not here.
Only did he have nothing to do with it, it had nothing to do with the season that Nebraska was putting together.
And it had nothing to do with Nebraska, because the thing didn't happen. It happened the week before Nebraska was there. And even in that moment, he found something that he could answer and give that person kind of a moment.
He easily could have just said like,
I wasn't here. I really can't speak to that.
Or like, what kind of question's that?
Yeah.
Like he could have just come out and just been frank and just said exactly that.
Be like, I don't understand what you're asking me. Like,
or like, how about we stick to this season? Moving on. Go ahead, Sam. Or whatever.
Hey, I wasn't here. I really don't have a comment. Like,
but am I answering your full question?
Even in that moment, which is, to be fair, and nothing against this lady who asked the question, one of the worst questions I've heard in a press conference, just because it was so far from anything that had to do with Coach Rule, right? It just was not super relevant. But the way he approaches the media and press conferences is he not only allows for people to have the safety to ask bad questions, but because of that, you get way better questions because people aren't afraid to ask him things. But aside from the philosophical part of, I wanted to get to some Tony White stuff here. I thought the most interesting thing Tony White said yesterday was that he regretted his lack of aggressiveness against Michigan State, which I kind of, you see that in the game. You're like, man, I wish they were getting more pressure. I wish they were being, getting maybe sending some plus rushers on some of these pass attempts.
Let's get that straight. That's bull crap.
And you just and you watch it and you're like, man, I really wish they were getting more pressure on the quarterback, and they're just not getting there. And then he calls it out. He's like, hey, that's on me. Like, I should have been more aggressive.
Yeah, the ownership that this staff takes on the dissatisfaction of what they saw or see is
my favorite thing about him.
Unlike any other.
It's my favorite thing about the staff.
The hell out of me.
It's just the ownership, right? And look, you talk about like not playing aggressive defensively. Like, this defense still played well. Yeah. They just didn't play elite or really, really good like we've seen in weeks before.
They didn't get that big play. They didn't get the turnover.
And what, you allowed 2 more chunk plays than you normally do?
Yeah, 2 or 3 tops. Yeah.
Yes, they resulted in touchdowns this time, or a couple of them did.
Or extending drives that allowed touchdowns, yeah.
But they weren't horrible.
No.
The defense was still the bright spot of the weekend.
The only bright spot of the weekend.
There were plays they got beat, but let's not blame them for the defeat.
Yeah, you're not going, when we talk about going 1-0 every snap, you're not going undefeated for a game on defense, right? People are going to get yards. People are going, most likely, most weeks, to score points, right? But I appreciate that. And it wasn't just, hey, I should have been more aggressive. He really went into depth about, like, I need to trust these guys in order to be more aggressive. And he's like, I talked about a couple of weeks ago that we need to play a little bit more like loose and free, and I really need to unleash these guys. And he took that upon himself, say, hey, if I want him to play like that, I have to play call like that. And he called himself out, which I didn't hear a question that led directly to that, in the sense of, like,
yeah, it's almost like, when you're something's eating you up.
Yeah.
Right.
It seemed like
you lied to your parents and you're like, I just have to come clean. Like, that's how Coach White was feeling in that moment. Like, I just have to say what's on my heart right now, because it's just not gonna make me feel better, but it's just it's
the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's the right thing to say in the moment. What I really liked from him,
I mean, exactly.
And not only just that quote, but I liked what he said about takeaways, because I've been asking about takeaways, how they go from a good defense to an elite defense, and we had mentioned that if they can get more takeaways or something in the turnover department, you could probably get there. And I was really comfortable with his answer. So he had mentioned they come in waves, and we just don't have enough time to really get to the quote and respond to it. But we can play it throughout the show. Shane, it's White 8 if you want to mark it.
Man, live with that, bro. That's playing ball. I ain't tripping.
It had me thinking, how often is this defense in position for a takeaway? Like, are they on the field long enough for a takeaway, 1? Or 2, are there enough balls that are thrown that can either turn into interceptions, or are there enough plays that, you can punch the football out? And I mean, some of that's luck, right? A majority of the time, like, punching a football out for a fumble is
whether
luck.
or not you recover it,
right?
Is certainly, yeah.
But look, this team is still 16th in total defense. They're 13th in sacks. So, like, they're not pressing down the field a lot. And whenever a team's on 3rd and long, what do they tend to do? They're not throwing it. They're trying to just make up some yards so that they don't turn the ball over, say, in their own territory. They're 12th in first downs allowed. They're 99th in red zone defense, but the attempts are only 25.
Yeah.
So that stat is a little bit skewed. Rushing defense, they're 3rd. Passing efficiency defense, they're 30th.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, Georgia is tied for 44th in turnover margin with 11 gained. Nebraska has 10.
More Hurrdat Sports coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We are wrapping up hour number 3, or hour number 1.
You did that yesterday, too.
I know. I did it on hour 2 yesterday. I've done it on hour 1 today.
You are all off on your time.
It's going to make it seem like I'm trying to get out of here. I'm not. Wrapping up hour number 1 with segment number 3 here on a Wednesday. I want to tell you about the Teammates Mentoring Program. Dr. Tom and Nancy Osborne in 1991 founded the Teammates Mentoring Program because they saw a problem. 1 in 3 young people growing up without a mentor. And it's their mission to positively impact the world by inspiring students to reach their full potential through mentoring. Mentors and mentees meet in school during the day for about 30 minutes once a week, just to chat, play games, whatever they need to do. And, you know, obviously the mentees benefit from the relationship, but almost all of mentors say they end up better for having participated in this program as well. If you want to learn more or become a mentor, go to teammates.org today. Want to talk to our next guest on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, Kendeigh Maloney from the Omaha Supernovas. Kendeigh, how are you this morning?
Good morning, guys. I'm great. How are you?
We are doing well. So, Kendeigh, we're going to start off with some of the basics here because we haven't talked before. What is, for the people that aren't familiar, what is your role with the Supernovas? Like, what is the main thing you do for them?
Yeah, so I am, as of recent, on the fan engagement team. So it's kind of like an ambassador role, and what we do is we promote ticket sales and social media engagement and really just try to spread awareness about Pro Volleyball Federation.
So
okay, interesting.
As a former Nebraska volleyball player, obviously you are well qualified to be an ambassador for the great volleyball fans of this state. I'm sure you knew as a Nebraska volleyball player how much this state loves volleyball, but have you really gotten an even greater sense of that in your new role with the Supernovas?
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually had the opportunity to do a couple of events this past weekend and, spreading awareness, like I said, and everyone already knew about the team. A lot of people up in Omaha already had season tickets. And I mean, it's to be expected in Nebraska. I mean, you guys saw the outdoor volleyball game, 92,000 people. It's really the pinnacle of volleyball. So I think people are really, really excited about it.
Kendeigh, are you at all like, you don't have to admit it, but are you at all jealous that this wasn't a thing when you were graduating from Nebraska?
Oh my gosh, I will 100%. This is such a cool opportunity for people that are graduating to go on and play in the United States. It's a really cool opportunity. So yes, if this was a thing in 2019, I definitely would have been a part of it.
Now, okay, did you go play overseas at all, or did you just stop your playing career and then go into, let's just call it, the business side of it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I, by the time my senior year was over, you've been playing volleyball for a long time, and I decided I needed a break. Took a year off, and then I actually attempted to come out of retirement and went out and trained with the USA team for a bit, and quickly realized that my body was no longer fit for diving and playing. So yeah, then this opportunity presented itself, and I was like, yeah, if I can be a part of volleyball in some way, even if it's not on the court, I'll do that. My
body was never equipped for diving or playing, so you had the leg up on me there. Now, okay, you mentioned the historic match at Memorial Stadium, a historic opening match on January 24th for the Supernovas. How much do you enjoy just being a part of history, even though you aren't physically playing?
Yeah, it's so cool, you guys. And I think there's no better place for that to happen than Nebraska because of how much people love volleyball and they're just so enthusiastic about volleyball. So it's awesome to be a part of it, and I'm excited to watch the girls compete and watch history be made.
We're talking with Kendeigh Maloney of the Omaha Supernovas. Kendeigh, obviously we've got a couple months until that opening match still, but you mentioned some events that you've been going out to. What kind of events have you guys been putting on, and how can people find out about those events and attend if they want to?
Yeah, so really what we do is we find events that are already going on. So, for example, we were at Avarie this Saturday for the Nebraska State Games and set up a booth and kind of just, caught people walking by, introducing them to the league if they didn't already know about it. And then we went up to Omaha to a Creighton volleyball match, and same idea there. So what we'll do is we'll find events that are already happening and place ourselves there so that we can put ourselves in front of people who we know already enjoy volleyball.
You mentioned getting excited about the season to come. Why should people be excited about the Omaha Supernovas? I mean, we know how committed this state is to volleyball, but to the Supernovas specifically, what should get them excited about this season?
Yeah, I think just the level of the team that we have. I mean, I played against some of the girls that are going to be on the Supernovas team. Kendall White, who's a libero, who brings so much energy to a team. I think it's just a really exciting group of players. They've also got Tina Mancuso, who is a Nebraska volleyball alum. She's one of the greatest players to come through Nebraska as well. So I think just the team that they've put together is really special, and it's going to be exciting for people to be able to watch really high-level volleyball.
Kendeigh, I have to ask you, just because we've got you here. I know we're talking about the Omaha Supernovas, but I've got a little bit of Nebraska volleyball question, if that's okay too.
Okay, yeah.
How impressive you've been this year with how dominant this team has been and how young they are. I mean, there is, I think there's one senior on the roster, I think, this year. How crazy is it how good they are already at such a young and relatively inexperienced stage in their careers.
It is. It's mind blowing to me. I really can't put it into words. It's more of just like a feeling that you get when you watch them. But I'm so impressed with the level that the freshmen have brought to the team. And I mean, you've got people like Lexi Rodriguez and Allie Batenhorst and Lindsay Krause, obviously, who are juniors. But I think the addition of the freshmen has just really blown up what they can do. So I'm super, super excited for the tournament. I think that they are going to make a really strong tournament run this year.
All right, be honest with me now, Kenzie. How did you feel about Coach Cook pulling on the cowboy hat after Wisconsin? Can he pull off that look?
Oh my gosh. I have to say yes to that question, don't I?
I mean, he's not taking.
You don't have to say
he's not
yes.
taking playing time from you anymore. You could say no if you want to.
Oh my God, no, it's so funny. I think it's really, really sweet to watch him like find a hobby outside of volleyball because that's his life. So I think it's cool that he's found something that he loves. And, you know, the cowboy hat is part of it. So I'm going to accept it. I'm going to say yes. I love it. I love it.
Now, Kenzie, tell everybody where they can, really sign up to be involved with the Supernovas now, whether that's in some type of sponsorship capacity or season tickets or some sort of package. Like, what would you say is like the easiest way to be involved with the Supernovas in their first season?
Yeah, I think attending matches, definitely. Season ticket pricing is online at supernovas.com. And I think people will be pretty surprised by the pricing of season tickets. They're super reasonable. So I think, especially in this first year, just attending matches is going to be huge for the future of the league and for helping it gain momentum and traction.
Kenzie, as this league kind of gets kicked off, this franchise gets kicked off, just what are you most excited about as we get closer to the first match in January? Just what's the thing that you can't wait to see?
I can't wait to hear and see the reactions from the younger generation. Girls who have grown up playing volleyball, who now have a chance and an opportunity to watch professional volleyball in the United States. You know, that's not really something that we had when we were growing up. We never really had idols who played pro volleyball. It was more collegiate players. So I'm excited to see how the younger generation interacts with the Pro Volleyball Federation and just, what that will do for them growing up and them saying, okay, yeah, I want to play in the Pro Volleyball Federation in the United States and be able to be with my family after my collegiate career is over. So that's what I'm most looking forward to.
Kenzie, we'll get you out of here on this. You mentioned, looking up to somebody as a kid, but maybe more so as a competition separator. You played all the way up through college. You played like the best of the best with college volleyball. But then I'm kind of sitting here and I'm thinking, what is the biggest separator in terms of competition going from college to pro, or is there a big difference there?
Yeah, I think maybe it might be when you go to play professionally, it does feel like more of a job.
Okay.
Right? I'm sure that the schedule is, not to say that the college schedule wasn't super harsh, but I think once you move up to pro volleyball, it's really more of like, this is my career now, and this is how I'm earning money, but I get to do what I love as well. So I think that was probably the biggest difference there.
I know it was kind of an unfair question because you're not actually playing pro volleyball, but I was just kind of curious because I didn't know if there was like a huge separation between college and pro volleyball since you're basically scooping up former college players.
Yeah, it might be pretty similar, honestly, you guys, because you are taking people who have recently graduated and who have, still been getting a ton of reps.
Oh, Kenzie, I think we lost you there.
But we appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure. That was Kenzie Maloney from the Omaha Supernovas. I think we lost the phone connection there right as we're coming to the end of the hour here. But make sure you go to supernovas.com to check out season tickets and everything like that, how you can get involved with the Omaha Supernovas. Really appreciate Kenzie Maloney's time. Coming up next, we've got Brian Christopherson from Lester 24/7.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Brian Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
I was terrible. Okay, I'll start that way. I was terrible, but we were like number one in the country in takeaways or something, top 3 in the country, right? And we didn't do anything right. You know what I mean? We just didn't do anything right. But they seem to just come in waves, and I always go back to sometimes when you give them a chance to go make a play, they surprise you and they do. and that's why I'm putting it all on me in terms of, those one or two chances I thought we could have been aggressive that you look back at the tape and I'm like, I should have went after him here. And sure enough, we would have had a chance at least to get a field goal or hold them to a field goal or maybe possibly rush the passer a little bit better. Like, I didn't give those guys that chance, so I got to do better.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by our friend Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, how you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Good. We are doing well. We played that clip of Tony White as we were bringing you in here, talking about how he didn't put guys in a position to do the things and play the way he's asked them to in terms of playing loose and free and unleashed. What did you make of that comment? Do you think it's just, I know from a layman's point of view, I hear it and think, he wanted to send more pressure over to the quarterback. He wanted to be more aggressive in terms of his pressure packages. Is it just that, or do you think there's other things involved when he takes an answer like that?
I think it's a guy giving himself just a really tough critique, and wanting to hold himself to a high standard, just like they're talking about this defense being to a certain level. And I'm sure there are 2 or 3 plays. I don't know that he ever mentioned specifically what they were. That would have been interesting, like which plays he might not have wanted to give that away. But those specific plays would have added some context to that. But I'm sure every week there's going to be, especially in a game where you come up 3 points short, there's going to be a handful of plays where you look back and you say, yeah, I should have done this differently as a coach, just like a player is saying that. And I think that's what that was about. Like, I can think of specific examples in that game where it shines light on just how thin of a margin this defense has, not because they're really good, but I'm saying the thin a margin they have because the offense isn't scoring many points and the special teams has kind of been average. So they have to be on all the time. And if they have one little slip up and give up a few points here or there, it could end up being a loss. And one of those plays was the drive when it was 10-10, and there was that 3rd and 11 on about the 45-yard line, and they completed a 14-yard pass. Defense played pretty well on that series. They almost stopped them on 4th and 1. They had them 3rd and 11. They gave up one pass, and yet Michigan State kicked a 52-yard field goal, and that sort of ended up being the tilter. And I think it's that kind of stuff we're talking about here, where this defense knows they've got to just be like dynamite in those moments, because even if you give up that 1 3rd and 11, it's just one play, but it could end up being whether you're sad or happy when you wake up Sunday morning.
BC, the other point of interest for me was when Coach White brought up the takeaways yesterday and how they come in waves. And, I presented this question to Ravi earlier this morning, and I'm curious on what you think too. How often is this defense in position for a takeaway? And is that the potential of why the Huskers are, short in the takeaway department? Because I ran down the stats and, they excel in almost everything. Total defense, 16th, first downs allowed 12. They are 13th in sacks. They're 30th in passing efficiency defense. And then I brought up Georgia's turnover gained mark, and that's at 11. Nebraska's is at 10. So are we only bringing up the takeaways because that's like the last piece to make this defense go from good to elite? Or are they just actually not in position for a lot of takeaways?
No, I think they are in position to have more than they've had. Like, I think there was 1 or 2 they could have had this last Saturday, and Rule even brought a couple of them up. That's interesting, the point you make. I think sometimes when people think of like just those ultra great defenses, they do think of that squad that just takes it away like 2 or 3 times a game. I always think of Bear. It's because I'm an NFC North guy. I always think of like Bears teams when they didn't have a quarterback, but occasionally they'd have a year, where they took the ball away like 3 or 4 times a game, and you're like, "What the stink," as a Vikings fan.
Sounds a lot like 2018 or 17 when they had Trubisky.
But I think it's stuff like that people get in their head, sort of, where you have those certain defenses you remember. Like Bo Pelini's first defenses, those of a certain age. We're starting to get long enough in time where some people aren't even going to remember when Bo was the defensive
coordinator. 03 when they had 25 interceptions.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago. It's sad. But when he was the D coordinator, I mean, Bullock's brother had as many turnovers as Nebraska has right now, it feels like. And so I think that's what gets in people's head. I do think they're in position, though, Andrew, because I don't think some of the other stuff comes out in the numbers the way they do, and they tackle really well. And maybe there's some technique and punching it out that they could do a little bit differently. But there's just been a few where they've had their hands on the football, and that guy's got to sort of make that extraordinary play. And I think it's being critiqued like this because the margin for error for this team is so small, and the other side of the ball is, not scoring a lot. And so you've got to be special. They will have to be that to win a couple of these games down the stretch, because Iowa's going to come in here and try to take it away 3 or 4 times. So this defense has to sort of match that and be that kind of crew.
BC, I'm curious, we've been talking a lot about the defense and Tony White. What did you think of the comments made by Satterfield in terms of Heinrich Haarberg and his, just start running through people's faces again? Like, what did you... To me, I kind of just took that as like, hey, you're overthinking. You need to start kind of playing more instinctually, which I think is accurate. I don't know what you think. It looked like you could physically see the wheels turning in his head on Saturday, which is generally not great as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's what that's all about. There was a couple plays where in the pocket especially, you could see like he was actually like processing it in real time, like more than you want from a QB. Mm-hmm. And so he's caught in a weird spot now, and I do think they've explained it correctly. They're right. Like a lot of times we have seen when we watch football, there's that QB who comes on the scene the first week. There's not a lot of pressure, right? It's like, oh, how much does he really know anyway? And he goes and he does some stuff, and people are kind of fired up about it. But then as he's played a few games, there's more data in his head. He's accumulated more information. He's like, oh, this works, that doesn't work. And you start to think about it while you're going sometimes. And Heinrich, if you listen to him talk to the media, he's a very thoughtful guy. Like you can tell he is an analytical guy and a guy who really likes to process things thoroughly and all that stuff. And he says sometimes that can be damaging to me as a player. And so I think they're just trying to get him to be like, be that Heinrich kind of off the bat. Yeah, you've picked some stuff up and you want to process it as best you can as it goes, but also don't be hesitant out there. Just be that guy who the first week was like, I'm going to run through that safety and make him hurt more than he's going to hurt me. And because that's your biggest asset right now. So I think they're trying to get him to lean into that.
BC, speaking of Haarberg, I was thinking about this when I was listening to him talk yesterday, that, it seems like he's got the personality to get over things quickly, but will that mindset translate to the field come Saturday? Do you like how he's carried himself this week off the loss?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's just a guy, he cares so much about his craft and his team. And there's no easy way to go in and talk to the media about a play you thought was a dumb play you made. And he used that phrase at one point, a dumb throw. What happened. Everybody saw the stuff on tape that maybe could have been there. There's some stuff we don't understand too. Like, on the one he had to Alex Bullock, for instance, where early in the game where it could have been a long touchdown, ends up being an easy pick for the safety at the 4-yard line. That was obviously a bad throw by him, but it was interesting hearing him explain his process of what was in his mind. He knew it was bad when he let it go, but also that had been where the ball had gone on that play in practices and everything he had repped, and the guy fell down, so he needed to adjust on the fly. So I think it's some stuff like that, where the play kind of takes on a little bit of a different shape. maybe than it did on Tuesday or whatever. And he's got to get to that point where he can that quickly without overthinking it, still react to it and be like, no, this is how I got to make that throw. Boom. And it's got to be just like that. And that's why quarterback is such a tough position, because think about it. You rep something, you do it a certain way. You're like, this is where the ball's supposed to go. And then all of a sudden in 1 to 2 seconds, you need to process, nope, ball's not going there. It's got to go over here on this play. And so it's a challenge, but I do think he's got a good mentality. I think he's a guy who can be coached hard. I think he doesn't mind like Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield getting after him on a Saturday, and he takes it and goes with it. So that part doesn't bother me. It's just a matter of over the next few games, how much can he grow as a passer in sort of seeing the field. And it's such a tough thing to do. So it's whether he can or not. If he does, give him a lot of kudos, because it's not an easy step to take, I don't think, for a player.
So BC, there's a couple different things I think with Harburg that are happening at the same time, and we've touched a lot on the decision-making part of it, but I think there's also just an accuracy portion of it as well, where, you know, we see a lot of the balls come out high or inaccurately down the field. How much of that do you think is correctable in season? Because it does seem like sometimes when he lets go, he's not, whether it's, you know, his elbow dips a little bit and his arm angle is a little goofy sometimes. Like, how much of that do you think is correctable in season?
Yeah, I mean, you're working with what his sort of technique is for the rest of the year. I mean, you're not going to change anything like that on the fly. So it's a good question, Robbie. I mean, it's just got to be a deal where he himself is a little better, and that there's no other way to put it. Like, if you go back to the Michigan game, that was his best passing performance to me, like for 3 quarters. If I think he was like 10 of 12 or something at one point. It kind of faded off at the end, and his stat line didn't look as good. But I remember looking down at 3 quarters, and it felt like there was some precision, and he was really confident in some of his throws. And he has those that he's put on film, like even this past Saturday, that one he hit the Betts on the run from deep in Nebraska territory where Betts almost housed it. You know, it would have been a 90-yard play or something, ended up being like 30 or 40.
Or you mean
what's that?
You mean Coleman?
Yeah, Coleman. I'm Betts.
It's the 15 that's throwing you off. I understand.
Yeah. No. Coleman on the run. That was a beautiful ball. And he's had a few of those throws where you're like, okay, you've got it in you. I think it really comes down to hitting those layups though. Like the play where he tried to force it into Jaden Dawson, there was like 3 guys around him. That's where he's got to see the progression of the field within his offense and realize on most plays, you know, Coleman was coming across, and that there's a little 5-yard pass he could have flipped to him, and Coleman runs for 20+ yards. So there were like 4 or 5 of those kind of plays that were just missed on, where it's like the layup line, and he's just got to make those. And I think if he does, that can boost the confidence to some of those other throws. So, I mean, can he do it? I don't know. But if he does, that might elevate some of the other stuff we see.
BC, despite not tackling as well as they normally do, would you say this is the best tackling defense you've seen in a while, or did the performance this past weekend turn you off from that?
No, it's the best tackling defense we've seen here in a while. Certainly through the Frost era, I think. I know the 21 defense was competitive against some good competition, but I would say of all the flaws on this team, that is not one that I even think about much. And yeah, they're going to miss a play or two, but they've repped it so much, and they've been so physical in practice and taking it to heart. I really think they're probably one of the better tackling teams in the country. I mean, I remember the first week of this season talking to Bruns and Schaefer. I was like, geez, I haven't covered a Husker team the first week that looked that fundamentally sound tackling, where there weren't like 3 to 5 plays that were an extra 10 to 15 yards that opening week, you know, because someone swings at air. They've been really solid. So I love that part of this team. And yeah, the defense didn't play their best Saturday, but you also got to be reasonable about it. they were okay. I mean, they're that's a good crew. And for a first year scheme and how many guys they've rotated and how many young players that are going to come back next year that are a part of it, that's a reason to be really excited. And what would we can go back to the turnover thing to finish that point off. If they could have that game like Saturday or a game against Iowa where they do all of that and then they had like 3 or 4 turnovers and there's a pick 6 or something like that, that's sort of the bow on top of the present that would be for this defense if they could find it to kind of finish this thing off.
Speaking of Bo, we're probably going back to what, like early Bo Pelini. A little transition there for you. We're probably going back to what, early Bo Pelini since we've seen a team tackle like this. Is that like 2009, 2010, like somewhere in that range?
I think that's right. I mean, yeah. Maybe all those Bo teams had some gritty guys on defense. I mean, the 2012 had a good run, but then of course they had a disaster. I would say 2009, 10. Yeah, I think that's the last time there's been a defense that's tackled quite like it. And when you said that, I was thinking of Bo Pelini actually sitting on top of the present. Now that would be interesting.
That's what I thought too.
It creates an interesting visual. You remember those like Lexus commercials where they'd have the bow? Just like with Bo Pelini, like sitting cross-legged on top of a car. Be like, Merry Christmas,
it's
guys.
Bo Pelini on top of an AC unit with Nash Hutmacher leading the charge for the commercial.
And you mentioned that 09 and 10 teams, they don't have a Levante David on this team. They don't have a Sue on this team. I'm not even sure they have a Crick on this team, at least not yet. Maybe some of the young guys turn into that, but
I haven't seen any of those last names.
It kind of makes it even more impressive what we've seen from them so far this year.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm talking about tackling specifically as far as
yeah.
Although, it is impressive when you look at the stats after a game, and I know some teams they've played have wanted to be more throw heavy, and that's their strength and whatever. But Nebraska's stopped 8 teams to 100 yards or less, and I think that matches 2009, and it's almost going to hit what they did in 1999 as far as rushing defense. So some of those things you really got to take stock of and say, man, that's pretty good for a first year. And like you say, you're doing it without necessarily that superstar that you just point to and say, yeah, he just flips a game on its ear all the time. It's been very much a team coordinated effort. And the thing that's exciting about it is, there's freshmen who you can see what can be. Princewell didn't play last week, but we've seen what could be there. Cam Lenhart, guys like that. It makes it kind of exciting about what the defense potentially could be in 24 if guys stick around and all that stuff. We know there's always a long off season in college football, so we'll get to that part when we get to it.
BC, you mentioned some of those guys that didn't play, and that's weirdly not a thing that we've talked about very much on the defensive side of the ball. Like Princewell not being there, I think was a really big deal after the way we saw him play in the last couple weeks before that. Obviously Omar Brown was in protocol. You had Malcolm Hartzog leave the game. You had several major contributors on defense not there. And the fact that we aren't even talking about that as one of the reasons they weren't necessarily quite as sharp as they had been is a little bit crazy, right?
Yeah, that part's been their biggest achievement. It's that especially the defensive line. I spent like 5 months whenever anybody would ask about it saying, well, I like the top 2 or 3 guys, but what about when you get to like guys 4 through 8? And I, just repeating that. And they've answered the bell on all 3 levels really with that. Safety, we could go back to August, Miles Farmer leaves. And remember, that was like a story for a couple of days. Like, oh, he was going to be most indispensable Husker, one of the guys you'd think about. He's played all these snaps and stuff like that. When does that topic come up?
I haven't thought about Miles Farmer all year.
Yeah. It's, some things like that. Great. I mean, and then no knock on him personally. I'm just saying, other guys stepped up and you're like, yeah, whatever, and Deshaun Singleton went down and he was playing really good.
Yeah, really well.
And that's a shame because I think he was playing at a pace where he would have reached another level maybe at this point. But nonetheless, Phelan Sanford comes in, does a nice job, and now you got Marquise Buford back. And so they've sort of found ways to like just cover stuff where you're like, oh, that's a little hole. Could that become something? And no, it hasn't really. And now they got to just finish this deal. And that's where I say finish it in style. And Saturday would be the beautiful time to do that. You know, one of those games against an elite quarterback. Both teams got to have it. Both are 5-4. Maryland's in the same boat where if they lose this game, if you look at their schedule, suddenly a bowl game doesn't look that obvious for them, you know? So, this is fun. It's like not going to be like one of those national highlight games that everybody's talking about. But as far as the two teams involved, it's kind of a big deal. Like this one matters a lot. So, this is where the defense has to have their best performance of the year.
BC, let's just end right there with the game against Maryland this weekend. Nebraska needs to do what successfully, like your number one key successfully to get that 6th win this weekend?
I mean, the obvious is we could always say, like, yes, turn the ball over less, please. You know, like turn it over less once or less. Like, we'll give you one, but just stop it at one.
We'll give you one.
Yeah. And make the one
2, BC. I said if they can keep it -2 on turnovers, they're fine.
I'm with you. It seems kind of snarky to say it, but it's true.
Yeah,
yeah, and make the turnover be at like the 50-yard line where you didn't feel like you gave away a score, you didn't give them a score, but something like that. But also, speaking of the offense, I think they've got to find at least one play that's just a major explosive in this game. Which helped them get over the hump, I feel like, in those home games previously, you know, the big pass to Malachi and then to Jalen Lloyd. They're going to need something like that where they get that 55-yard play and it's 7 points right there. And then one defensive or special teams, almost a score, you know, something like that basically sets up a score. And I think that's the formula. And if they do those things, I think they can win. I would maybe slightly favor Maryland, I'll be honest. But I think if they can do those, check off those boxes, they could win and just come to play early. And that crowd, it'll be a crowd that's into the game if Nebraska gives them a reason to. It'll get loud in there if that defense is balling. So that's what I'm hoping for because it'll be a good scene.
It's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 BC. We appreciate you as always. We will talk to you again next week.
Always enjoy being on, guys. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, BC.
Great stuff there from Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 on our Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. You know, just a reminder, you can play sports bets in Omaha
Yeah,
now.
you can.
Andrew knows 6303 Q Street at Horseman's
We're
Park.
actually talking with some Warhorse people today.
We are. Our friends at Warhorse Sportsbook. You can go to the casino in Lincoln or the Horseman's Park in Omaha in person to go place your bets, whether it's pro, college, basketball, baseball, football, whatever. They've got you covered. Go to warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for details and a full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Coming up next, Andy Kendeigh from KETV.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of ups and downs. You know, even inside the games, you know, one quarter we come out really slow, or you know, maybe against Northern Illinois we start hot. You know, just managing all of that. It takes a team, you know, I think, and so I'm glad that we have, you know, coaches that understand that, and there are the staff to help support that. Dr. Haskell. You know, a lot of people up there who help manage that because I couldn't do that by myself.
We are halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, hour number 5, right?
Hour number 10 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers making fun of me because I never know what day or time it is. It's 8:30 and it's Wednesday. And we're here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're brought to you by our friends at Dyer Law. If you have been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. No matter what you're dealing with, call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals. That's DYER.law. And speaking of trusted professionals, there's no one I trust more as a professional than Andy Kendeigh from KETV. AK, what's going on, bud?
Suck up.
Oh, you are. That's fantastic. Thank you. The check's in the mail. Early morning for yours truly, boys. It's signing day. I don't know if you do that. Signing day. Those kids. I was over at Elkhorn North just now. Got Britt Prince and a bunch of her classmates signing letters of intent to play their respective sports in college. Pretty neat.
That's pretty awesome.
Deal. So Andy, I gotta ask you, because I know the Britt Princes of the world get all the headlines, right? Obviously, she's one of the best women's basketball recruits in the country. But one of the coolest thing about those signing days for people that maybe haven't been to one is you've got everybody there at most of those, right? So it's the kids going to play D2 or D3 or NAIA. They get to sign their letters all at the same time. Is that how Elkhorn North does it as well?
Absolutely. They had, I'm counting here, 16 or 17 kids signing letters of intent. And in sports from like that range from baseball to swimming, softball, volleyball, basketball, golf. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And this is just a snapshot of what great athletes we have in the Metro. It is the coolest thing, though, when they take the pictures with the family, they sign a letter of intent, and then they bring all their classmates or teammates down with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the neatest picture in my deal, because obviously you're going to have the family pictures, but to see the support they get from their other classmates is pretty neat. So, it was a cool deal and good for Britt. We got a chance to talk to her afterwards, and it was interesting talking to Britt because, this was no slam dunk in terms of her decision.
Right.
And it came up, she said it came down to last week, and she said it came down to Indiana and Nebraska, and she just wanted to stay home and play for Amy Williams, which is a huge gift for that program. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. It's going to be an exciting time for that program because, man, she is a unique talent. And people, she's going for 4 state championships in high school, and they have a great team to do it, because people forget about McKenna Murphy, and she just signed to play basketball at Colorado State, so she's on that club too. So all eyes will be on Elkhorn North girls basketball when they tip that up.
AK, sometimes I forget that I've been up for 3.5 hours, so I lose track of like when people actually go to things. Did all of these things happen before school for these kids?
Well, it was a great jigsaw puzzle we had to figure out yesterday. No, the answer is no. Some of them do it this afternoon. Some of them do it at midday. But the majority try to do it in the morning to do it before school. Like Elkhorn North did theirs before their classes started.
Yeah, because
it varies from school to school.
Right, I was curious because you mentioned how a bunch of their classmates showed up for their signing day, and I just didn't know if they wanted to get out of class too.
Well, and then the other thing is, guys, is that normally they have cookies or donuts or something.
Oh, okay.
Decorated, the school logo cookies and the donuts and all that with the team colors. So, there's also some food involved. So, but I was actually very, very, very impressed with the amount of kids that showed up, because their bell doesn't ring until just after 8. And that gym was pretty crowded at 7:15. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, just the support just all around at all of these high schools for their friends and teammates is just spectacular. I love seeing that stuff too. Now, as you, let's transition to state playoffs and talk about the support that the teams still remaining have been getting throughout the entire football season. I'll look at Westside first. I know you have close connections to Westside too. If I set the playoff points, the total number of points allowed at 20.5 for Westside this playoffs going forward, and what they've already given up, so the 6 points that they've already given up, would you take the over or the under?
I'm taking the under. So basically, they can't give up 15 points.
Correct.
So
yeah.
Anything more like 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns and a field goal. I'm telling you, Westside, if they continue on their road, now they're not there yet. They're halfway there. So if they get 2 more in the way that they've done their first 2, they will be talked about. I know the Creighton Prep teams will take issues with it. Of the great Creighton Prep teams of the mid '80s and late '80s, will argue. But Westside will be, if they can finish this off, will be talked about in the conversation of the very best high school football teams in Nebraska history. Now, again, this is far from over, guys, and I know there's a couple teams that are waiting their turn to try to get their crack at them. Millard West, who's had a sneaky good season this season. They're going to give them their best shot, and then we'll see what comes out of the other side. My guess is it's Millard South, but maybe Alcorn South. They're a different team when healthy, and my gut says it will be Westside Millard South in the final, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But no, Westside has all the tools, and as long as they can stay healthy and keep their heads on straight, I think we'll be talking about the Warriors for years to come.
Andy, I do just want to chime in here. The recently retired Fred Petito's 03 Millard North team would like a word as well.
Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about that great club. It is interesting when you talk to guys who've been around the Metro for years and years, grew up here, lived it, breathed it, whatever. It is interesting. You throw out a discussion like that, and you just kind of shut up and listen, because everybody has an opinion, and everybody has a point. Like, you can make a case for, like 03 Millard North, if you say, or whatever, or the mid 80s, the Creighton Prep teams, because I got buddies of mine who I went to college with who swear that those were the greatest teams. And the other thing that I think is interesting that some people will bring up is the level of competition around the teams that are playing. The West Side has a great, incredible roster, but the level of competition, there were some games where they literally could have scored 100 points in a game this year, right? But they picked up the foot off the gas because they're good sports. I mean, that's just the way it is. I think that's a fascinating discussion, and there's no right or wrong answer. That's the thing. And you can make a case for a handful of teams for the all-time best football teams. I love that type of talk. Just give me I need a cold beverage though.
Maybe a couple of pops. We could have a nice discussion about the best high school football team in Nebraska history. I did want to talk Class B real quick. You said you were just out at Elkhorn North this morning. Obviously, they've got a big semifinal matchup with Bennington. Scott got through a thriller against Blair as well. Do you think we are headed for a Bennington Scott rematch after the way that opening week game ended on that controversial call?
Well, man, that would be something if that happens. I'm not as convinced of that as I am. I lean more towards the West Side North South. I'm more confident in that happening than Class B. I think Class B, the 4 teams that win this weekend would not surprise me. It would not surprise me. I think Elkhorn North is a rock solid team, and Bennington, while rolling this year, are they as the Benningtons of the last few years? I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Weeks. Yeah, I agree. So we'll see. We'll see if they can come, because the job's not done yet. And then Scott, Scott really pulled one out last week. I mean, they were down. But man, good on them. But Waverly is a team nobody talks about in Class B, and they're having one of the best seasons that they've had in recent years. So I would not be surprised if any of those 4 come out. It would be fascinating to see Bennington Scott Route 2, though.
That's Andy Kendeigh from KETV. AK, we appreciate it as always, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, AK.
Thanks, boys. Have a good week. Thanks, boys.
You too.
Yeah, that's that's a discussion that I've gotten in on Twitter with people as Petito retired.
Oh, really? You getting into discussions with people on Twitter?
And one team that we didn't mention that people like to stump for as well is the 82 Westside team. They did not allow a point in the playoffs in 1982. So got to give a shout out. Our friend Dr. Rob Zadishka made sure I knew about that one as well. So we appreciate that. But it is a fun discussion to have because there's no way to know, right? So,
and the conversations I get involved in, at least right now, have everything to do with this Michigan scandal.
And we are going to get to that coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2. Got it right this time.
Yeah, we did.
Here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers. Shane Schilberg producing for us here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're brought to you by our friends at Rockbrook Camera. We love Rockbrook Camera because they're not just about selling you a camera. They're about helping you become the best photographer you can be, whether you're a professional, just casually taking pictures of your life and your friends and family and keeping those memories. Whatever your needs are in the camera department, Rockbrook Camera has you covered, not just with the equipment, the latest technology like mirrorless cameras, but with support after the sale as well, with classes to help you get to know your equipment. You can also trade in your old gear if you're ready to upgrade, or check out their extensive rental department if you just have some short-term needs. Go to rockbrookcamera.com for more information or to shop online. If you want to shop in person, go to 168th and West Center in Omaha or 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln. That's our friends at Rockbrook Camera. I don't know if Connor Stallions went to Rockbrook Camera for his spy gear. I'm sure their equipment would have been more than up for the job. But
it would have worked.
It for sure would have worked. And, maybe.
And he probably took a class or two.
He probably had to figure out how to use it. But, man, This thing gets stupider every day, and I love it so much.
Yeah, it's just funny because it started on Monday when we heard Coach Rule give his thoughts, and he kind of went like pretty deep into it, deeper than I thought he would.
More than
dive.
I expected, yeah.
And he essentially said, like, people aren't going to feel sorry for us, and then a question was asked, like, do you know what your personnel does throughout the week? And he's like, there's not an analyst on our staff that I don't know what they do and their duties and things like that. And
by the way, that's true. Like, I know people are like, oh, these staffs are huge and they don't know what's going on, and there's so much to keep track of. Football coaches are control, not just football, all coaches are control freaks by nature. That's why they're good at what they do.
Except for Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Who didn't know what was going on.
He had no idea what was going on.
And, that's kind of like what I think about when I think about Jim Harbaugh saying, like, oh, I didn't know Connor Stallions was doing this. Like, yeah, you did. Just stop with the lies. Like, how'd that work out for Northwestern?
Yeah.
Your head coach got fired. Now, Northwestern also wasn't a good team.
Yeah.
So it helped to lead to it. Plus, the stuff that he was doing was a lot worse,
Yes.
I would say, in terms of hurting somebody else than hurting the integrity of the game.
Sure.
But it's still the, oh, I didn't know argument doesn't work.
No.
That does not work in today's age.
Even if you didn't know, which again, I don't believe, it is your responsibility to know. It's your responsibility.
And that's what we said about Coach Fitzgerald.
Yes, even if he didn't know, then it was negligence, right? It's one or the other. Either you knew and were involved or okay with it, or you were negligent and not taking care of your program. Like, those are the only two options, because I know for a fact how coaches think, and they are control freaks. They want control over every situation. The hardest thing for them to do is to be hands off and things like that. And for stuff like that, they'll never be hands off. They want to know what their coaches are doing. They want to know what their analysts are doing. And like Coach Rule said, every one of his analysts, every one of his support staff has a job to do to be there on game day. And so they're not traveling out to places like that. It's the worst excuse. I mean, you can go back to like Rick Pitino at Louisville, who's like, I didn't know they were hiring prostitutes on visits. It's like, okay, bud, where'd the money come from for this GA who doesn't get paid to have something on a visit? It's like, and again, if you didn't know, you're negligent, not taking care of your
It's like the
program.
quote in The Blind Side, right? When Sandra Bullock's like, and you need to take him to a movie, but not a scary movie.
Yes.
And you have to feed him like barbecue because he likes barbecue or whatever it is. Like
Get him in bed by
Alfredo.
10, yeah.
Get him in bed by, like, that's how structured these things need to be. And that's how you know that when, like, people talk. Right?
Yeah.
People run their mouths. You
Even if
heard through the grapevine.
Even if it wasn't your idea in the first place, you cannot tell me that they didn't know, because everybody in the country knew. People called TCU when they got that matchup, and they're like, hey, you better change your signals. You're telling me everybody else knows, but the head coach of your program doesn't know?
And, that's funny, too, because you mentioned how other teams are talking to other teams about changing their signals. The most recent update that has come out with this Michigan thing is the Wolverines punch back, or at least attempt to punch back.
I think they whiffed on that punch back.
Well, they got hit hard and they had wobbly knees. And, whenever you see a fighter with wobbly knees, they just start like swinging, like just flailing, hoping to get lucky.
Yeah.
That's where I think Michigan is right now. They take information that was handed to them. And yes, whoever sent, stuff saying like, hey, this team talked to that team and that team talked to this team about your plays. Look, people do that all the time. That's every sport. That's every team.
Not illegal.
That is
against
just
the rules. Yeah.
Well, it's basic huddle film.
Yeah.
Like, I share with you, you share with me. You can't tell me Michigan didn't do that.
Yeah.
You can't. Well, maybe they didn't because they had an even more reliable source doing that. But still, you can't tell me at one point Michigan did not do that too.
Yeah.
So let's get off the pointing fingers train and just accept that you got caught.
That you did something wrong.
Just accept it.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you accept that you got caught, you probably limit the punishment.
Yeah.
Versus if you prolong it, and then it gets even further and further, and Petiti goes, I think I'm going to like lay more punishment on you versus like the 2-game suspension or whatever I would give you.
Yeah.
Look, you violated a policy, right? You violated the sportsmanship policy. The other one, if I'm Rutgers and I'm sharing information with Penn State and that's Ravi, that's not illegal. Should you do that? Like maybe it's
a
against
gray area at
right.
best.
Maybe it's against the integrity of the game, but that's not the same as in-person scouting.
I was gonna say, yeah. So the biggest difference here is what Michigan is accusing other teams of is maybe, but definitely not clearly a violation of the sportsmanship policy. What Michigan did is against very specific written rules of both scouting in person and videotaping in person other people's sidelines. Both of those things are explicitly not allowed.
You know how much easier it is to pick up people's signals when you're at the game physically shooting the other team's sideline? When it comes to figuring out what other teams' signs are, that comes from watching game film or like national television coverage and trying just to see if you can pick up on something.
You're not always seeing that specific sideline and the guy calling the play.
And look, it's based on like what you see the quarterback doing on the field. Like, is he calling an audible? What are his motions? Like, is he pointing things out? Like, those are the things that you have staff members wasting 10, 12 hours on way after the week, trying to get you up to speed on what to expect from each player.
And I can tell you with certainty from having done it, when we would have in basketball, and I get it's different, but the principles are the same. In basketball, when we would have a tournament and we would scout in person the team that we were going to play next, because you all play in the same day in the same arena, basically, in some of those tournaments, is the amount that we were able to know exactly what their calls were and what they were going to do on a given play when we were there in person was so much easier than trying to pick it up from film. Because you can't always see, you can't always hear, you don't know exactly what they're trying to call out all the time. When you're in person, you can see all of that. You have one guy assigned to, hey, what was that call? Make sure you write that down. And what they run after that, let's diagram that play. It is so much easier to do it in person, which, by the way, is why it's illegal.
And, you know, it's funny because Dan Wetzel posted something on Yahoo, an article, and he's kind of like, he's more siding with Michigan than he is everybody else. And the article Dan like posted, at least the body of the posting, not the article, just the posting. Michigan and Purdue broke the exact same rule. They used advanced scouting to steal a future opponent's signals. They may have broken the rule, like the sportsmanship policy rule. Like one was more in a gray area than another. But I'm sorry. No, I'm at the back end of that. They may have used advanced scouting. Both of them used advanced scouting.
Everybody uses advanced scouting.
One person got it from other teams. One person did it themselves
in person.
But the problem is they didn't break the same rule.
No.
It's not the exact same rule.
No, it's not.
One was in person and the other was using look, they had signs on paper. That doesn't mean that that's what it's going to be recreated on the field.
Also, it's very specifically not the same rule. That's an incorrect post by Dan. Like, I don't know what he thought he was trying to make there, or if he's just like,
well, and I don't know if he was just trying to look for clicks, but there was another point too, that if there was an analogy in the comments, and I'm team comment page, you know that, Ohio State and Rutgers talked about the math test that they took in first period and told Purdue about it, who takes the test in the third period. Michigan broke into the teacher's desk and stole the answer key.
Well,
like that's the difference.
Yes. Well, and listen, there is, again, it's a gray area with the sportsmanship policy of sharing that information with other teams, but it is a literal violation of specific rules what Michigan did. And it's honestly the closest corollary, because it's very similar, is what the Astros did stealing signals versus what everybody else in baseball does. And you know, some of these staffers that were quoted in, I believe it was Nicole Auerbach's athletic story about it, are like, hey, you're allowed to steal signals in baseball. If you can get it from the third base coach, or if you're standing on second base and can see what the catcher's signs are putting down, that's totally legal. What you can't do is use technology and use cameras and all that kind of stuff to signal people or record things to figure out what signals or what pitches are being thrown and what signals are being used. That's the exact same thing that happened here. You have one team doing, like, stealing signals is allowed in college football. Stealing signals is allowed in baseball.
It's allowed in sports.
There's very specific things you're not allowed to do. Michigan did all of those things.
And what's funny,
that's the difference.
What's funny, too, is you bring up, like, it's a part of the game. But that just also shows how advanced an athlete or a coach is to be able to pick up on somebody's tell or signal and use that against them. Like, that is just really, really good coaching. The other one is
cheating.
a crime.
It's cheating. Coming up next, we've got our friend and colleague Avarie Howard joining us here for the final hour on a Wednesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
What's the Husker prayer? Dear Lord, the battles we go through in life, we ask for a chance it's fair. That's all I want. I want every game. I want the 60 minutes of the game to be fair, not tilted one way or the other. And, I just think I want to do things right so our players learn the difference between right and wrong, even in competitive equity. And I think it's a shame when people say, well, would it have mattered? You know what I mean? Like, if it's a great analogy, but I'm afraid to use it. But so I just yeah, it is what it is. I mean, other people have talked about it. It happened, whether it affected or not. None of that matters to me. I just feel bad for our guys. As they look at me like, hey, coach, what are you doing about this? So I do feel like I need to say something on their behalf. We carry this record, right? But I just want everything to be fair. That's all I care about.
Kicking off. There we go. Kicking off. Yeah, hello. Noonan. Kicking off hour number 3 here. Is that right? We are. Nailed it.
It is the 9 o'clock hour.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for hour number 3, we are on the KFOR station in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers with me, and Avarie Howard joins us now. Avarie, how are you this morning?
I now don't think I can hear anyone. I think we turned it
hold on.
Too far down.
Check.
Can you guys hear my voice?
Yeah, we got
you. Okay, then I'm good.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
How are you doing this morning?
Good.
Yeah?
Doing good.
How was East Lansing? Like outside of the result?
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. It was pretty cool. We got to adventure down to like the little strip of campus to go get food, and they had a really cool little area down there of food and just local places. And it was, a busy Friday night before night of the game, which is always fun, and got to see a little bit of the campus, and it was really cozy and old Big Ten school. I kind of wish we had more time to go adventure, honestly, but they had a lot of stuff figured out. I'll tell you that much, because downtown, no, not downtown, or maybe it is downtown, I don't know, but they're down little strip of like college bars and restaurants and just close to campus.
Sure.
They have like walk-up windows for like fast food places. So like they had a walk-up window for like Cane's, and it was packed in there. And like, but it's all like in this little area. Like it kind of looks like there's apartments like stacked on top and stuff. And then they had like a Walgreens sized Target. And then they had like a late night cookie place, and they had like a sandwich shop and like little local places, but they like, you could walk up to the window and get food. Like they had it figured out. And me and David were like, that place has to be open until 3 a.m. Like all these places have to be open. Yeah, but it was cool. It was a fun little atmosphere. And we thought we were going to go watch Husker volleyball play Penn State, and we ended up being in the mix of Parents Weekend. So, but yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, you guys were sending us some like photos and stuff on our teams, and it looked like you guys ended up in a club. So we put our name in at a few restaurants because they had a lot of.
This was Chinese.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, where are we?
So we put our name in at a few like the best restaurants recommended in East Lansing, and of course there were like 45 minute waits. We're like, why don't we just put our name in at a few? We'll do the walk and see what else we can find. Well, as we're kind of coming around the corner of the block, there's this one place that David was like, hey, that's actually a brewery that looks like they have a lot of TVs and stuff in there. If we wanted to wait. Whatever. And they had all the Big Ten flags hanging outside. So we were like, okay, that has to be promising. So we went in there. It was like dead. Like nothing going. And we were like, oh, we're not gonna be able to get an appetizer or anything here. I don't even think they serve food here. I think it's just drinks. So we were like, well, maybe we'll come back later to like watch a Husker volleyball game. So we go eat our food, really great food. It was called the Jolly Pumpkin. It was really great. And then we were like, okay, let's bounce over.
Back to the nightclub.
As we were about to walk in, they like are now like paying, like making you pay cover. And we were like, oh, okay.
Did you pay?
So it was $5. So we were like, okay, fine. And it wasn't really that packed. Like there was
the cover.
It was $5.
But to go into a place that wasn't packed.
So it was really okay.
Oh, it was gonna be.
It was.
I know.
Yeah. But we were like
at the time, I'm like, I probably would have walked on.
But we wanted like a big sports bar to watch Husker game because the TVs we were at the place before didn't have it. I recommended BTN, and it was still in the Ohio State game. So I was like, we're going somewhere else, like whatever. So we go in, we sit, like the front of it is like part brewery, part bar. And then like, you can tell there's a ton of space in the back. And there's even like a little private room that had like a fireplace and a lounge spot. So it felt pretty chill. Like we thought we were going to have a chill. Yeah. And all of a sudden it just within 10 minutes, like we got out to the bar to get a drink to watch the game. And it just was like, whoosh, like David kept going, oh, Chad from ATL was on the DJ booth, here we go. And like like all of a sudden it just switched. And so we were immersed in it, but there were some Husker fans back there, so we were kind of like standing by them having like small chit chat and we were watching
Did it get
them.
really, really loud in there
Huh.
because of the music? And then were you screaming?
Yeah, like the next day, I was like, that was not good. Me and David were like having casual conversation. I'm watching the Omaha hockey game on one phone. We've got the Nebraska volleyball game on the screen, another phone, and I'm like, ah! The next day, I'm like, oh God, I forgot you have to scream in there. Yeah. So. Yeah,
so
college
great weekend.
College 2.0. Yeah, for like 2 hours. But Sasha got asked if she was there for Parents Weekend.
Oh no,
that sucks.
Which was good. Yeah.
No, not good.
That was good. Well, for me and David, we thought it was pretty funny.
It is funny,
Yeah.
but Sasha probably decked him.
Well, all these I don't even know if she was like, no.
Oh, that's good
Yeah,
stuff.
so-
So what's your favorite road trip so far this year?
Honestly, East Lansing was pretty cool just to like actually go see the environment just
Yeah.
because we usually don't have that much time. But unfortunately, I'd have to say Colorado for sure. Just because
I mean, it's just a pretty area.
No,
it's
it is.
I love Boulder, first of all. Sasha and I got to go to Pearl Street.
You heard it here
Big
first.
Colorado fan over
Yeah.
there. We heard.
Yep,
Oh,
I love
interesting.
Boulder. Can we
Interesting.
take that? Can we cut that up, Shane?
Listen here, guys. So when I was young,
I
we
think
would
we can
always
cut that up.
Thank you. You know what? I'll take it. We used to always go to the mountains like twice a year. We'd go ski, we go in the summer, and we would stay in Denver. And then on our way into the mountains, we would always stop in Boulder.
Do you love Boulder?
I do love Boulder. I really love Boulder. I love it. It's beautiful. It's awesome. They have a really great strip of food, and my family would just always stop and get coffee or something there before we went into the mountains. So it was nostalgic for me, if you will. So we got to enjoy
Why
that.
do you sound hostile?
Huh? Oh, I don't know. Do you love Boulder? Yeah, I do.
My name's Avery, and I approve this message.
Yeah, I do. So anyway, I think all the hype created around it, and it was really early game, but it was beautiful, and like just the energy, we haven't touched that kind of energy like the rest of the season in an away game. It was just incredible. And even though it was an old stadium, to be in the press box, they have all the windows open, and so like sun was peeking in at certain spots, and you were like right in with the crowd. Where I don't know if you guys have been to like a Memorial press box this season. It's pretty quiet. Like, there's no open sound. It's pretty
Right.
business-like. So as much as that's fine and that's what it's there for, it was really cool to be immersed in the crowd. I don't really think I've had any other experiences in the press box this season where I get the natural
Where you
sound
get the
like
crowd
that.
noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does. I think kind of add something to it.
Yeah.
That's nice. Have you been up to Madison before?
I love Madison. I
Love
love
fo-
Madison.
Shane, cut it.
Sure do.
We've got.
She loves the Big Ten.
I do. I visited Madison when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was obsessed with that one this summer. So I know
Yeah.
it's a little bit different, but like their campus is on the water.
Yep.
I was never a fraternity sorority person, but like when
Well,
we did-
soccer is technically a sorority.
it is, but I was never going to be immersed in that. But I always thought the houses they add to the university's culture, and all of their houses are on the lake. So like they have docks, and it's like a row, and it's really old, and the buildings are old Big Ten-ish. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
it's a really cool little town for sure.
So we were talking a little bit about Michigan before you got here, and Shane came back with that clip of Coach Rule.
Don't love Michigan.
Big Ann Arbor fan here.
Never been.
And Shane came back with that clip from Coach Rule, which I
Yeah.
thought was kind of interesting because we don't normally get that from Coach Rule. He's not somebody that shares his opinion on outside noise.
Yeah.
He normally keeps everything in house, although I thought he spun it pretty well, especially because you can tell he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
You can tell he wants to stand up for his guys.
Yeah.
I
But
love
he-
the guy.
But he can't do that because it goes against the culture and the standard that he has set forth at the program, which I think is like a cool balance that I was able to like truly witness. I mean, they talk about going 1-0 every week. They're worried about us, not the opponent, day by day, right? You get all those things. They're all team focused. And, you know, because everything's in-house, I just love the fact that he doesn't deviate from the standard. I'm curious if, like, with everything that you hear and like see going on, because I mean, what are we halfway through the movie? 3/4 through the movie now on the Michigan scandal?
Ooh, I think we're about 2/3.
2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, we still. I think the punishment dropping is going to be kind of
We
like
haven't hit the climax.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's
We're
the
building.
climax?
We're
Like, are
building.
we close? Because it's kind of like it's a long fight, right? I've been using the analogy of like boxing or
Okay.
UFC because Michigan's just getting beat up, and then as they're like with wobbly knees, they're swinging back with anything that they have left, and sooner or later we'll get that knockout punch. So yeah, I guess we're just waiting for that. But with everything that you see going on and the way that Coach Rule handled it, do you think he married those two well?
Yeah, I think it also is just because the first week when he was asked about it, he went a different direction, and it was more about like, let's just change the way play calling is done in the first place, and like let's just put the dang microphones in the helmet and just do it the way everyone else is doing it. In terms of other leagues, but I think because there's been a little bit more steam behind the conversation from other coaches, like I thought it was, it's not funny, but I thought it was kind of funny that when they had the conference call with the Big Ten, like all the coaches like knew to stay on, like coach hopped off and like the rest of them stayed on for an hour. It felt like this like middle school phone call, like, hey, I'm staying on for the sleepover. So like when they go, we'll talk about our plans kind of thing. It kind of cracked me up a little bit to know that he just got off and all of them were like, we got an hour. And so I think just because there's been a lot more of communication between the coaches that we know about it's happening, it's pretty transparent that there's clearly like a all versus one situation happening right now. I think there's a little bit more confidence.
And rightfully so.
Right, for sure. And I think there's a little bit more confidence to say, before I didn't know all the details, I knew some. And now that I've talked to their coaches and we've had discussions with the Big Ten, and we're now like, okay, there's more than enough for us to say, I think that's where it's like I can stand up for my players now. I'm not going to sit here and finger point without having, because unless he knew it or not, he didn't say anything about the Michigan-Nebraska game. He was like, I didn't see anything. It's just kind of how it goes.
But he did bring up that he had like they've been affected by
and now it's like kind of been like, well, now we've got 2 games where 2 touchdowns have been called this, and we had a game where our game plan was already written in a book for them. So I think, I think he did, but I also just think there's a little bit more steam behind the conversation where he's like, I've got more firm ground to stand on.
Because of information and because of the support from the other
the
personnel in the conference. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's I'm really interested to see what how this plays out with Tony Petitti, because I apparently now Michigan's threatening legal action if the Big Ten does anything before the NCAA investigation's done, which I'm not sure what grounds they would think they have for that, since there's literally a policy.
Know what's so funny about that? If I can just butt into your point here before you ask your question, do we not realize that if Michigan or a Big Ten team makes it to the college football playoff, that the conference gets money? Like, so you don't think the conference wants a Big Ten representative in the playoff to get like 6 or 8 million, whatever it is, spread throughout the conference?
Yeah.
Like, no, the conference absolutely wants every bit of funding that they can get.
Well, yeah, and it's, I don't even think keeping them out of a game or anything like that. Like, I think it'd probably be like a coach suspension or something like that. I don't think it would be, hey, you're banned from the Big Ten title.
Sure, but like whatever. Michigan is taking this point like, oh, everybody's out to get me. It's like, no, actually, we kind of like what you've been doing the last few years, giving us money for getting there.
Yeah, I mean, the conference needs Michigan to be good, right? They need Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, frankly.
But they
Nebraska.
just want it to be fair so that they can compete to maybe be that representative someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, and we talked about this earlier in the week, Tony Petitti works for 2 sets of people. He works for the universities of the Big Ten, and he works for his television partners. Like, he's not going to do something that hurts the television partners, even if it makes the Big Ten coaches mad. Like, he has to find a balance of, hey, what's going to appease the other Big Ten schools that we actually punish Michigan, but not make our TV partners mad who know that Michigan is one of the biggest properties that we offer to them. Do you think a suspension would appease the rest of the Big Ten schools? Like, is that enough for the other schools to be like, okay, I feel like it's fair now?
I mean, I feel like for right now where they're at in the season, probably. I can't imagine that you say right now in the season, you're going to say, all right, Michigan, you're cut. It's done now.
You can't go.
I just don't know if it really will affect anybody. Like, what the result would be, unless Jim Harbaugh doesn't coach the Ohio State game.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the Ohio State game. Maybe
and
doesn't
maybe
coach the
Ohio
Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, right. If that's what it is, then maybe
that's
it's like,
hey,
hey,
big punishment.
Yeah, that's like, don't do this, or this could happen to you. That would make sense. But suspension, it's just hard for me to be like, oh my gosh, yes, that will be the ultimate punishment, because they'll just have somebody step up in that role, and Harbaugh could coach from Connor Stallion sideline.
I was gonna say,
if they already know what Ohio State's doing, they don't need nothing else.
He's gonna pull off,
get his spy gear out and start,
put on a fake mustache and
world's smallest
be good to go.
Bluetooth little in his ear. Yeah, I think there's a decent chance that no punishment comes down until after the season, And I think that's going to make the other Big Ten schools super mad.
You like Michigan gets an asterisk at the end of the year.
Well, I just think that
one, but
I honestly think that, it's going to be really difficult to hand down anything in season. And I think that's what the other Big Ten schools want. But you're going to cause a huge bleep storm if you
don't take action.
If you don't take action, but you're also going to cause one if you take action mid-season and basically derail Michigan's season. Like you're in a really tough spot if you're Tony Petitti, and I really don't know what the right answer is because I'm not sure there's a win for him here.
Well, so another article came out yesterday, which I was curious about because it could have some lasting effect on the rest of the team in terms of the Heisman voting.
Yeah.
So JJ McCarthy is, if he isn't the favorite, he's
top
number 2.
Yeah.
And there was a Heisman voter out of Indiana that wrote an article, which you're not really supposed to talk about the Heisman, like at all.
Yeah, who you're planning on voting
right?
for,
Like you're just not supposed to do that. So you could essentially forfeit your vote.
Yeah, people have lost their votes
if you go too far. So he's taking a risk by posting an article like this, but he's essentially saying how it's not fair to give JJ McCarthy a Heisman vote if Michigan did indeed cheat in terms of calling plays, because all that does is impact his stats. If he knows what's happening, he's throwing for 500 yards and 10 touchdowns, right? If Ravi knew everything that was about to happen, he would throw for 400 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah,
right?
that's because I can sling it.
Right.
Though.
Yeah. I mean, you got
totally.
You have an arm like Tristan Alvano has a leg, right?
Yeah.
But
67-yarder, let's do it.
67-yarder. I got a question for you in a moment. It's about that point. So in terms of, is it fair, not only just for JJ to get it if he has like the information at it, like that's like having the test answers before you get there, and that's why you got 100, and Michael Penix, who studied his butt off, gets a 98.
Yeah.
And sorry, you're not valedictorian because you didn't get the 100, and JJ did. Like that's like the type of reward we're talking about here. So it may have lasting effect or trickle down effect on people on this team, and it was out of their control.
I want the documentary like yesterday.
Well, you're just a documentary fan.
I am, but like this is what I'm like. I want it. Like it might be like 20 years down the road when like JJ like pulls the chair and he sits down, and because I just want everyone else's perspective of it, and then I want like the evidence that people go back and pull camera footage and they see stallions in different places. And then you have this crazy analytical guy that's pulling all the ticket situations. And I want all of it to like be in one piece, because right now we're piecing it together as much as we can. But I can only imagine in the locker room, like all this is happening around you, and how much of it are people being like in that locker room, like, oh, okay, maybe I knew something about, but I don't really know how it's affecting me. I've seen this guy. Like, I know this guy. I didn't know he was doing that. Like, there's so many staff members on a football like team. So I don't know how much the players do know, how much they don't know. And that's the stuff I want to know right now. Like, we could all be like, how do they don't know? But like, we could also be like, they maybe might not be in any of this at all. And I want I want all of it.
You want the information
now,
right?
I want the sit down on the chair.
And it's going to be a great documentary. Someday, like, it would be a dream to be a part of a documentary like that, like be interviewed for like something you know a ton about.
So yeah,
like if you were in Ann Arbor reporting on this, like you're probably getting called by ESPN to put together this 30 for 30.
Hopefully they don't call Dan Wetzel, because I don't know what's happening.
That article was crazy. Did you see that one? So Wetzel essentially said what Purdue, Rutgers, and Ohio State did by sharing signals that they analyzed on game film. They shared it amongst each other, whether it was Michigan signals or other signals. In this case, it was Michigan signals, because that's what Michigan is using as kind of their like, hey, somebody did it to us too. He's claiming that's the same as what Connor Stallions in Michigan did.
I did see.
And it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
In-person scouting is completely different.
And
than
recording,
coaches talking to each other.
Yeah.
It's either clickbait or just exceedingly stupid. Like, and I don't know which one it is.
Or there's just no new development. So it's like, guess what?
I'm going to say something real dumb and see what happens. Like,
kind of like what I say on the show every day, something dumb and see what happens.
Just see what happens. Avery, I did want to talk to you a little bit about that, the Michigan State game, though, before we get too far into this. obviously the offense struggled
Yeah.
mightily against Michigan State. Did you have an issue with the play calling, with the amount that they asked Heinrich Harburg to throw the ball? I know we've talked about it a lot before. Just how kind of as it was playing out live, if you can kind of put yourself back in that moment, were you in the moment like, hey, can we maybe chill here a little bit with chucking it around the yard?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously learning as the season goes on. I feel like as everyone else is, but just as someone in media and like trying to analyze really what goes on in the field. Because at the end of the day, I know enough to figure out patterns and just habits, I feel like, of the team. But what I've never been inside a locker room, never been in a quarterback room, right? So I don't know enough. So I like to listen to the radio during the broadcast. And I obviously had some questions earlier in the game, just observation. But, I'm always like, is that too critical? Is that too harsh of me to say these things? I've never been in that position. And so I texted DB during the game and I said, hey, question, because we communicate a good amount during the game. And I just said, I hear you saying that the play calling from Sat, can't really be frustrated with it right now because technically it should be working. And I said, is that just a lack of wrong reads from Heinrich, or is this just a talent thing right now at the moment because that's just not his strong suit? And he said, it's just, it's hard because look how many guys are open. He's like, this should be working in the secondary. Wide receivers are gashing parts of Michigan State secondary. It's just the ball's not getting there. So you can't truly be that upset with Sat trying to think once again, all right, maybe we'll get lucky on this one. So that's kind of where I was thinking. Well, I started to pay attention to more in the second half, and obviously they kind of changed their attack a little bit. But it is hard when you have a receiver room that's
when the scheme works,
when it's working,
when the play works,
and
you can't execute.
Right. And let alone, I think it's one of my questions I was going to actually ask you in our preview is, when you have a wide receiver room that's depleted, and you have a quarterback, the throwing is not their strong suit, but gradually every game, it seems, outside of one game, I think against Northwestern, the passing yards have increased throughout the season, minus the receivers going down and younger guys stepping up. And it feels like Nebraska's trying to develop that pass game more and more, which I've thought is maybe interesting just because it doesn't feel like the strong area of this team. So, but when DB says that, it's like, you can't take that out of the game completely. If realistically you're watching it work, it's just not getting there. So I think, I was a little bit surprised, but then again, when you see that and how many guys are open and the ball just isn't getting to them, or that's the wrong read. As an OC, I can imagine that's a really tough position to be put in.
So I'm going to ask you this question. We're going to go into the break, and we'll let Avarie answer it when she comes back. If on that final drive it didn't result in a fumble, which should have been an incomplete pass, if they got to the 50,
does Tristan go for that?
Does Tristan get the 67-yard field goal with 3 seconds left, or do you see a Hail Mary pass from Heinrich Harburg? Which would Avarie like to see in that moment?
Wait.
Don't answer.
Segment.
Think about it, because it could also be what you think is the right decision to do, which is also what you think they should do versus, like, I have a bias towards my answer.
Kickers.
So think about it.
Okay.
We'll get back to it.
Avarie will answer that coming up next. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
Yeah, like the next day, I was like, that was not good. Me and Dave were like having casual conversation. I'm watching the Omaha hockey game on one phone. We were the Nebraska volleyball game on the screen on their phone, and I'm like, ah! The next day, I'm like, I got to scream. And yeah, it was college 2.0. 2 hours, but Sasha got asked if she was out there. Yeah, like the next day, I was like, that was not good. Me and Dave were like having videos within 10 minutes. Like, we got lots of bar to get a drink to watch the game, and it was just like before we had so we definitely thought
it is funny, but not probably yet.
We will be back.
College 2.0. Yeah, we're like 2 hours of the game on one phone. We got the Nebraska volleyball game on the screen on their phone, and I'm like, ah! The next day, I'm like, I can scream. College 2.0. Yeah, for like 2 hours, but Sasha got asked if she was on. Which is good.
No, not good.
Well, for me and David, we thought it was good.
It is funny, but Sasha probably yet.
Well, all these people, she was, I don't even know, she was like, no. Yeah, me and David were like having casual conversation. I'm watching the Omaha hockey game on one phone. Yeah, like the next day.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, like the next day, I was like, that was not good. Me and David were like having casual conversation. I'm watching the Omaha hockey game on one phone. We've got the Nebraska volleyball game on the screen, another phone, and I'm like, ah! The next day, I'm like, oh God, I forgot you have to scream in there. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean,
so
college,
great weekend.
College 2.0. Yeah, for like 2 hours. But Sasha got asked if she was there for Parents Weekend.
Oh no, that's
which is good. Yeah.
No, not good.
That was good. Well, for me and David, we thought it was pretty funny.
It is funny,
Yeah.
but Sasha probably decked him.
Well, all these, I don't even know what she was like, no. Sasha probably like, Avery, you need to
so
tell
what's
her
your
that.
favorite road trip so far? Shane, yeah, there we go.
Honestly, East
Sasha
Lansing was
is
pretty
kind of
cool,
like
just,
the
actually-
team mom. a
Yeah,
little bit
for
here,
sure.
So,
You say
know.
teen or
Team.
Okay,
Thank you for emphasizing that.
You say Pam or Pan?
I think I can help solve this Pam problem.
I think it's 2 M's. No, it's she's kind of our Hurrdat Sports team mom,
sure.
so it's kind of a parents' weekend. It's
I mean, when
not
you got
in
me and David over here with you, I mean,
not in the traditional sense of a college parents' weekend.
Yeah.
But all right, so Avery, Andrew asked you a question
yeah.
before we went to break here. A question that him and I have disagreed about all week. If you would have gotten to the 50-yard line, so I think before the fumble they were at like the 45-ish, and they got to. They obviously had the alleged fumble that pushed them all the way back. But
had they gotten to the 50 and only the 50, Coach Rule said, hey, we get to the 40, we're going to give Albano a chance. That would have been a 57-yarder. This would have been a 67-yarder in Andrew's scenario, which I would just like to remind everyone has happened like one time in any level of football ever. Would you have taken the 67-yard field goal attempt or a Hail Mary attempt by Nebraska and Heinrich Harburg?
How many seconds are on the clock?
Well, there's 3 seconds, so you have 1 play.
Yeah.
Like you had time to spike it because I don't think Nebraska had a timeout left, right?
No, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't have it.
Yeah.
So you get up there, you spike it. So you're rushing Tristan out there. So you have to take everything into account. Like it's not like, hey, you have a timeout and Tristan can trot out there, take a deep breath, look at what he's doing. He really just has to like get out there, heat of the moment, go after it.
Well, I'm trying to remember what the wind was like this day. And I can't remember what it was like. It wasn't crazy before the game. Just because the nature of the way the game was going, I think I'm going to put the ball on the ground and give it to Tristan.
Avery, I knew you were my favorite in the office.
I mean,
well, and think about it too. If Harburg throws it and he's trying to throw it to the right corner of the end zone, you know it's going to the left.
Logically, I'm like, okay, yeah, like we got to chuck it down the field, right? Like you got to give it. But the way the game was just, I don't know, vibes just weren't really giving me.
There's been
call me crazy.
Way more successful Hail Marys in the history.
No, for sure.
How many throws have been successful from Heinrich Harburg?
Yeah, like a lot of. I really like
Like on
Heinrich.
deep
Like
balls.
a lot of respect for the guy. I just don't. The way the game was going, the execution,
He wasn't playing his best football.
Yeah.
You have to take that into account.
I actually think the erraticness of where his throws go.
67 is too far, but it just
not for Tristan. Not for
It's
Tristan.
too far for everybody except for Justin Tucker, and it's probably too far for Justin Tucker most days.
Really? Justin Tucker?
For most. Listen, I
It
know
is,
you
it's
think
crazy.
he can become Justin Tucker. He's not Justin Tucker yet.
It was either okay. Here's the thing, though. I just think Nebraska, they still lost by 3 points.
I'm just saying.
It's a crazy question.
I think the erratic throw actually could help because he's looking over here. The defense thinks he's going over here. It ends up over in this direction. Boom, Hail Mary. Touchdown.
Doesn't Tristan have to build his leg up for that, though? I mean, he went from 47 to 55, so 62 would be next, then 67?
Guys, I think you guys underestimate the fact that TA would drill that on any day.
I mean, it's crazy. Like 67 is crazy. I'm just saying the way the game was going and just the execution and the ball coming out of Heinrich's hand that day. Just I don't even like. Was it going to get there?
You've got a better chance of a 50-yard Hail Mary getting there than you do a 67-yard.
You're right. Just not maybe on that day.
Yeah, but where's that football going? Is it going 10 yards out the back of the end zone?
The
Is it going
the
10
defense
yards
doesn't know
short
either.
Of the end
Yeah.
zone?
The defense doesn't know either. That's the key. Looking ahead to Maryland here.
Yeah.
Is there? I guess. How are you? I really don't know how to feel about this game yet.
Have you guys talked to any other writers yet? this
No,
week?
we're talking to
tomorrow?
Maryland tomorrow.
Okay,
I think
that's what I thought. I don't really feel like I have a good grasp on it either, just because the tone of press conference this week feels kind of post Michigan and just the transparency from Coach Rule and especially Coach White. I don't really think we see him get out of a calm zone ever. And he was pretty heated yesterday. And I just think there's a huge challenge on the table for this Nebraska defense, which, you know, what's interesting is I heard Jessica Cootie during the broadcast say this, and she said the defense is frustrated for obvious reasons, but it wasn't like they played this horrendous game. They just have set the bar so high for themselves that they have an expectation that they were not meeting. And they were giving up some silly stuff. They just haven't given up at times this season. So I think there's a big challenge on the table for them because the guys up front did their job. They held the rush to 63 yards. I think it was a secondary that had some questions. Well, now you're going to play a team that throws it around the yard like nobody's business. You got Tagovailoa, who's got 2,200 passing yards in the season, I believe it is, third best offense in the conference. So whether they're hitting a cold streak or not, this Maryland team right now, like that's their offensive attack. And when you have that quarterback in that position, like he's not going to stop that. That's the best part of his game. And he's also quick on his feet. And so I think the challenge for the defense is maybe you didn't get up for the Michigan State game like you should have. Like this is one of your second to last games at home and you're one game away from bowl eligibility. I know we've discussed that can't be in the front of the mind, but when you think you're going to probably close that door on Michigan State, and then you give up some silly stuff, and now you're in a position where you got to go up against a Maryland team that's on a 4-game losing streak looking for, and mind you, they're on a 4-game losing streak, but I'm pretty sure they're still averaging like 21 points a game. So I think it's like 17, 17, 23, 27 in their last 4 losses. So they're still going to find ways to put points on the board.
Well, that offense always will.
Right.
That offense, I mean, when you have Talia Tagovailoa just as your quarterback, he's one of the best in the Big Ten for a reason.
For sure.
That's why you get that. Now, going back to your Michigan State point just real fast in regards to the secondary, like, yeah, they lacked in certain areas, but you also have to give some credit to Michigan State too for how cute they played on offense.
Yeah.
Like they would try to put together some trickery, which in a lot of cases may bring your secondary up, which caused some chunk plays for Michigan State. And they didn't get a lot. Like, what did they have? 4 chunk plays in that game?
Yeah, it was like 3. I think it was like 3 or 2 explosive plays in the first half that kind of just.
Right. And I think it's just a lot had to do with the different looks that Michigan State just pulled off, and they executed those plays well. Those plays are called boom or bust for a reason, right? You either get a ton out of it or you lose 15 yards if it doesn't go well.
I'm curious how much of it Nebraska expected to see that, because they were playing with a quarterback. They had 2 quarterback situation. They were doing that thing where they would use one to rush, and the other guy would kind of come in and help him get out of the end zone, and then. So I'm just curious, and that's kind of how it's been in the few weeks leading up to that game. So I'm just curious if Nebraska also didn't really know what to expect. And I think it's also funny because I think Coach White or Coach Rule said, he was like, I'm just upset that some of the trick plays like worked. And I think it's just funny because like that's just what the expectation is. Like a trick play is a trick play for a reason. Like you're not going to see it coming. It's going to trick you. And he was like, I don't want any trick plays to do any of the no tricks, right? And so I think just playing more lockdown defense. And so I think that's why I think I'm a little bit on the fence for this weekend, is just because it felt like, and Nebraska went 3-0 in October, was trending in the right direction, and then it kind of felt like they just came to this screeching halt against Michigan State where just nothing really felt to go in their direction on offense or really on defense, where I feel like the defense has been a huge strong piece, where every time the other team would get the ball, I was like, I have confidence that it's going to be all cleaned up here. And I think Michigan State rose some questions for me a little bit.
You know, I'm wondering, Avery, because this is something that we've talked about, or I've thought about at least. I think we've talked about it on the show. But how much worse do you think they actually played against Michigan State than they had been playing in the 3 wins prior to that? Because the turnovers were bad. Some of the passing game was bad, but I mean, the offense has struggled the whole time. The defense, like we said, really didn't play that much worse than they had been. They just didn't get a couple takeaways. I mean, it feels like our reaction to the result has kind of informed how we thought they played. And I'm not sure there's a ton of difference there.
You know, what's interesting is I like to go back and watch the game on TV, like after the following week, just because there's so many things that I don't realize that I missed during the game watching.
Yeah, when you're field level.
Yeah, that, or if I'm on the press box, and there's so many things that TV shows on replay and stuff. So I think sometimes our reaction is heightened because you like, and then I'm on Twitter the whole game trying to keep things updated and stuff. And you see everyone's opinionated reactions during the game. So I would like to go back this week and really watch. I think what probably shifts that perspective and that opinion really hard is just the lack of execution on offense so much that everyone was like, it was a bad game. We couldn't score against a Michigan State. Bad, you know. So I think there was probably a lot of things that did go okay, just because you didn't beat a 2-6 Michigan State team. It was like,
well, in a lot of ways, Nebraska beat themselves.
I think they go on the road and they play 2 opponents. Like every time they go and play another team, they play themselves. Every single time we've gone on the road this season.
Coming up next, we're going to play a little Guess Who with our friend Avery Howard here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're wrapping up the show here on a Wednesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me, Avarie Howard with us as well on her normal Wednesday spot. And it's time for Avarie's favorite game. We're going to play
2 weeks ago
a little. Yeah, I know. You've kind of fallen on hard times and Guess Who.
Started off strong.
Yeah,
Sure
you know, it's kind of like Maryland. You start off strong, you fade it
Yeah.
a little bit. We'll see if you can get a win this week. Although if you're representing Maryland, we hope you don't.
We know
Andrew,
Avarie likes the opponents.
she does. She loves East
Okay.
Lansing. She loves Madison. She loves Boulder.
Mhm.
I like the college towns. I did not say I
okay.
like these teams.
Love these teams. Big Colorado and Wisconsin fan. Avery
fake
Howard
news.
here.
That's fake news. That is not true. Also, can I respond to Heath real fast instead of typing this out?
Yeah,
go.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay.
What do you ask?
He asked about if I think this team is bowl eligible. Just the doubts that they won't. I think last week, yeah, there we go. I was typing this since becoming a novel, so I'm just going to make this easier on myself. I think last week felt like the most probable chance for Nebraska just to kind of lock in that bowl eligibility position just with the opponent that it was. And I don't think it was a road game that Nebraska was entirely fearful of just the atmosphere and whatnot. I think the next 3 games definitely winnable. There's at least 1 in there, and I think potentially 2 in there. However, I think there's some outside pressures that make it a tad bit concerning. Just that Maryland's also looking for their 6th win right now, and they're coming off 4 losses, and they have the offense to put the points up to challenge Nebraska at home. And Wisconsin, I think, is a very winnable game, but because it's a night game on the road, that just add some implications, I think. And I want to say that's Wisconsin's last home game, I believe. I could be wrong. They might get a home game after Thanksgiving. And then there's Iowa, which is just an Iowa-Nebraska game. So no matter what, it's always going to, no matter how many points Iowa puts on the board right now, they find a way, and it's an Iowa-Nebraska game. So it usually seems to be an ugly back and forth, just tough battle. So I think there's a win in there. I just think Nebraska's got to do their best to block out the outside implications, or even just the outside pressures of the schedule. I mean, this weekend, if they can do that, I think it allows them to play pretty freely the following 2 weekends. And who knows, it could be a 3-0 situation. That's a crazy maybe statement, but if you lock in that 6th win, I'm just curious how that frees the mind of this team.
So if you are 5-6 going into the Iowa game, kind of a 2-part question here. Does Nebraska get their 6th win against Iowa? Or if they don't and go 5-7, do you consider this a disappointing season based on what they had in front of them?
I would, God, that's really tough because I want to say successful season for year one.
It's really good at 5-7.
But I want to say probably disappointing because this team knew what they left out in the field. And I also think too, for the senior class, the seniors that don't get to come back, I think that'll be the most upsetting and crushing piece for the coaching staff and probably this team, just because look what this senior class has brought this team this year. And I think for them not to be able to go to a bowl game this season feels pretty just when you had it in the grasp, you had it in your hands, probably against Minnesota to start the season. You already got the 6 wins right now. Or if you had it in your hands against Michigan State, maybe didn't have control of the game, but that was the game where it's we could have just done away with the whole 6-game conversation for the last 3 weeks of the game or the season. So I think it'd be frustrating, and I think it would probably be considered, a disappointment. But big picture here for maybe fans, media, when the month after the season's over, I think they can say, hey, you know what? If that's the first step we're taking in the right direction, then okay, we won 5 games, most wins in the last whatever. But because of where this team has gone at times, I really think they'd be
going from 5-3 to 5-7 would really be a downer.
I was like,
that's the part that you end the year with 4 losses.
That's the tough part. There is the fact that not just you would miss a bowl game, is you would end the season with 4 straight losses after you had gotten some pretty positive momentum. If the losses were spread out and it was okay, you win 1 here, you lose 2 here, you win 2 here, whatever. And it wasn't just a 4-game losing streak to end the year. That's the part that I think would leave a bad taste
for sure. Yeah,
more than anything.
Yeah, you win October and then you lose November. Especially what Coach Rule just said too. He's every game
November matters.
November is different. Yeah, he's I want every game at this university to be a big one.
That's to me the part that, because I think there's versions of. I think there's versions of 5-7 this year that people could have lived with.
Yeah.
That's not one of them.
No. The way that we're set up, if it ends up that way, which I don't think they will, I think they end up getting bowl eligible. But if it ends up 5-7 this way, this is not one of the okay ways to end up 5-7.
No, I totally agree. Totally. If you say record and not how, how do they get there?
Yeah. Could live with 5-7.
Okay.
Right?
But where they're at right now, to say they end 5-7,
that'd be a tough offseason, or tough going into the offseason at the very least. All right. Let's
do it.
We got 5 minutes.
Let's do it.
Let's play a little Guess Who.
Okay.
You have one?
Here's what we'll do.
All right.
I got my first prompt ready to go. Avarie against Ravi. 1v1.
All right.
Okay.
So we're just both guessing or what?
Yeah. So I'll have the prompt in front of me. We'll go ladies first, so Ravi can go first.
Perfect.
Thank you. No, we'll go Avarie first.
Okay.
Ravi. Sorry, I didn't mean to really hurt your feelings.
It's okay. I'll heal.
So Avarie will go first. You'll ask a question, then you get one guess after each question. Does that make sense?
I get one question and then I get okay.
So the first one is kind of a shot in the dark, but if you pull it off, I'll be super impressed, and then we will quit this game, retire it. You'll go in the Hall of Fame as a sole member.
Cool, and we'll change the game on Wednesdays.
Yeah, we're playing something different next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Ding. Okay.
All right, go ahead. I'm ready.
Male.
Yes.
Hold on, I gotta make a guess. Patrick Mahomes.
No.
Do I go?
No, Ravi.
Athlete.
No. Now you have to guess.
Matt Damon.
No.
Actor.
No.
John Mayer.
No.
Musician.
No.
Not an actor, athlete, or musician. Ooh, maybe it's a coach. Matt Rule.
No.
Comedian.
No.
This puts me in a weird spot, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we're still on mail.
Sure is. Great. We're just gonna The Rock.
No. Can you imagine if I tried to pull the fast one on you guys?
Okay. Let's see. Not an actor, musician, comedian, or athlete. What famous people are left? Let's see. Do they work in sports?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Scott Van Pelt.
No.
No.
Do they host a show?
No.
They don't host. Stephen A.
No.
Do they work for a team?
Yes.
Andy Reid.
No.
Do they work in football?
Yes. Robbie's like
trying to figure it out here.
Tony White.
No.
Oh, I probably should get to the next question.
Are they a coach?
Yes.
Connor Stallions.
Recently fired.
Does that count?
And I don't think he ever was a coach. But great answer.
I mean, you know.
Do they work in college athletics?
No.
Oh. Okay. Bill Belichick.
No.
All right. So we are at professional football. They work for a team. They are a coach, I think.
Correct.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. Who else are we thinking? Let's see. Matt Eberflus.
Well, you can ask a question.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Eberflus.
Yeah, it's
Great hire.
Terrific hire.
Yikes.
You love to see it. Are they a head coach?
Yes.
Sean Payton.
That's right.
Yes!
Unbelievable.
What did you guys talk about earlier?
Sean Payton. Nothing.
No,
Not Sean
we
Payton.
haven't talked about the Broncos at all.
Yep.
That's why I thought it was
crazy.
That's why I thought it was Stallions, because I was like, man, we've been talking about Michigan so much. You're
Well,
kind of obsessed. with
you asked if he's a comedian, and I was like, kind of, like in my head, but I'm like, that will throw him off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow. Why Sean Payton? What about the Broncos? Is
I don't
front of
know.
mind right now.
I don't know. I just
Probably
came
because you're talking about how much you love Boulder.
Probably.
maybe. No, I came in with Sean Payton. Sean Payton went to Eastern
Okay.
Illinois. My
There you
dad went
go.
to Eastern Illinois,
There
so
we
I don't know
go.
if that like had any correlation. But I'm like, what's a coach? Because we haven't done a coach yet. I don't think we've had a coach.
Didn't Jimmy G go to Eastern Illinois too?
He sure
He
did.
did.
And Tony Romo?
Sure did.
Look at
That's
that.
pretty good. I don't know anybody else. so
That's
don't
all I
ask.
got. That's all I got. I think one of my friend's parents went to Eastern Illinois.
All right.
Besides you.
Who's got one more?
Do you want to go? You got
My computer's frozen. So, or let me see. Actually, let me look up.
Do we
We
have
got a
one?
minute 45. Do you think we can pull it off in that amount of time?
Absolutely not, but we're going to try
Wait.
anyway.
Hold on. I might have one that I think you guys can.
Do you have one? Okay.
Yeah. 1 second. Hold on.
Do you know about the person?
Like enough that I think I
Yeah.
can. get
Okay.
you
I'll go
guys.
first.
Yeah,
Is
go
it a
Okay.
female?
No.
Is it an athlete?
No.
Is it a musician?
No.
Is it an actor?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Male actor.
I
Okay.
am so bad at male actors.
It's okay. You'll know this one though. We're
Has he
making it
been
quick.
has he been in a movie, like a new movie, in the last 3 years?
No.
You said no?
No.
Are they over 50?
No.
Ooh, younger actor not in movies right now.
Action movies?
No.
Ooh, I wonder if it's TV. Or is it a TV actor?
No.
Are they in comedies? Like primarily?
No. Well, no.
Is it Ben Affleck?
No.
Is it a heartthrob?
No.
Is it
Think seasonal.
Christmas movies?
Or Thanksgiving or Halloween. She just watched Hocus Pocus.
That's
I
true.
don't know who's in that movie though.
I don't either. Let's see.
It's a male though.
Are they in Christmas movies?
Yeah.
Christmas movies.
Come
Oh,
on.
I got it.
Come on.
Christmas with
I got it.
Go.
No,
Go.
is it Jim Carrey?
No.
What?
No.
Tim Allen.
No.
Will Ferrell.
There's 3 of them.
There's 3 of them. There's 3 Christmas movies.
There's 3
No,
Santa Clauses,
there's
too.
3 in a row.
There's 3 in a row.
How much time we have?
I don't know. I'm under pressure.
I don't know.
Kevin!
Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin.
Ah, there we go. That's the
Home Alone was on TV yesterday for the first time, so it came. Yeah.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice.
That's the show for a Wednesday. We will be back tomorrow. I'm Andrew. That's Andrew. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We gotta go.
And I'm Aaron Andrews.